Now, from the Low Country's news leader, this is Live 5 News.
Good Friday morning to you. Hurricane Ian is set to make landfall today, and our meteorologists have declared today a first alert weather day.
Yeah, we have team coverage across the Low Country today as we brace for the impacts of the storm. Molly McBride is live at Folly Beach and will update us throughout the morning on conditions there.
But first, we're going to head to our first alert weather center where we have meteorologists Joey Sovine and Chris Holtzman. Good morning, guys. What conditions are we waking up to now?
Yeah, well, good morning. We'll get to Chris in just a second as he has a look at how the winds are going to kind of change as we go through the morning hours. But you can see right now as we look outside, some raindrops hitting the lens here out of the Holiday Inn Riverview Skycam looking into downtown Charleston. Rain starting to pick up along the coast. Let's go right in on live Super Doppler Max. You can see this yellow here. That's where the rain starting to increase in intensity, and that's starting to move onshore. So a lot of you have been actually getting some pretty light rain overnight. No flooding out there right now, but this rainfall rate is starting to pick up from Georgetown to McClellanville, right down 17 into downtown Charleston, out to Folly Beach. So the rain is picking up. The winds are starting to pick up a little bit as well. And you can see as we look down to the south, you can make out a circulation center. It's not the prettiest of storms in that it's kind of lopsided. North side of this has a lot more weather than the south side, and the east side for that matter, as some dry air's getting in train. In fact, doesn't look very tropical on the satellite imagery, but nonetheless, winds at 85 miles per hour, according to the National Hurricane Center, moving to the north-northeast. Now, the latest forecast track, if you're just waking up this morning, this was adjusted a little bit more to the east yesterday evening, putting the landfall of this storm system, which is crucial, not so much for the winds because tropical storm force winds are going to extend out far from the center, but for where the worst storm surge is going to be located, because that's going to be north of where the center comes on shore. So we're putting basically Charleston to probably Myrtle Beach. Somewhere in that area is where the worst of the weather will be, with the worst storm surge just to the north of center. We do have hurricane warnings in effect up and down the coast. Here comes that rain. When do we expect the worst of the weather? Well, that's going to be rolling through later this morning, early this afternoon. That's where you can see here on Future Tracker, there's the storm center, according to this model, near Georgetown, with potential landfall there. And then conditions do start to improve as we go late this afternoon and into this evening, and the wind will start to die down. But the wind's starting to pick up this morning. Let's go over to Chris Holtzman. Chris, what are you seeing out there as far as wind gusts right now?
Yeah, thanks so much, Joey. Those gusts are starting to pick. Most of us were seeing gusts right now. That we're watching with the system, well, they are starting to pick up as well. Once again, that's expected with the center approaching. We're looking at gusts up to 40 miles per hour in Beaufort. We had a report off the Charleston Harbor of a gust to a 60 miles per hour. Also looking at a gust of about 30 miles per hour for Somerville and North Charleston. So as we've been saying today, with the ground becoming wet and with some of these gusts, that's not really great, because we could see some power outages with some of the trees coming down. But again, we are expecting these gusts to pick up as we go through the morning, eventually gusting up to about 50 to perhaps 60 miles per hour, especially along the coast. But this model is painting a landfall here east of Charleston near Georgetown. And as a result, that's where the wind would briefly subside. And then once the eye passes, then the winds will start to weaken. Of course, we'll have more information on the system coming up in just a few minutes. Back to you.
And as Hurricane Ian approaches our coast, we'll be providing team coverage on the storm and the impacts it will have for us here in the Low Country.
Molly McBride is live on Folly Beach. So, Molly, what are you seeing and what kind of conditions are you experiencing out there this morning?
Yeah, we just got down to Folly Beach, where we'll be live from all day. We're going to be heading down to the beach in a little bit, but for now, driving down Center Street, we saw businesses were prepared, already boarded up with sandbags. Officials here say there is potential for major flooding and that a storm surge could produce up to a 10-foot tide. They also say that emergency capabilities may be limited during the storm. So for a list of open shelters, visit live5news.com and click on the big red box. Of course, we'll keep you updated with information as we head down to the beach. Reporting live at Folly Beach, Molly McBride, Live 5 News.
All right, thank you, Molly. Well, you can stay in the know with First Alert Weather on our social media platforms. The usernames are right there on your screen. And also make sure to check out our brand new TikTok.
All right, well, of course, we are tracking Hurricane Ian this morning. The center of circulation over the Atlantic right now, it is strengthening, but we are expecting conditions to start to deteriorate with more heavy rain and also gusty wind. We'll have the latest information on the system after the break.
In November, we'll vote on whether to hold a risky constitutional convention. A convention opens Alaska's entire constitution for unlimited change. Hunting and fishing, privacy rights, guns, access to public lands. We could lose big. No single issue is worth opening this Pandora's box. A convention is just too risky. This November, vote no on ballot measure 1.
This communication was paid for by No One Will Defend Our Constitution. The top 3
It's the all-new Subway Series menu. 12 irresistible new subs. The most epic sandwich roster ever created. It's Subway's biggest refresh yet.
With Nectar's Forever warranty, the quality of your mattress is guaranteed for forever, no matter what. Seize the day, night, and everything in between with Nectar.
All right, 4:08. Welcome back here as we get started on our Friday morning as we continue to track Hurricane Ian. Watching this camera right now, this is down downtown Charleston, South Carolina Aquarium. Right there is Columbus Street Terminal adjacent to there, the port. You see the water. You can see almost make out the wind direction right here, kind of bringing that water up against the dock there, out there at the South Carolina Aquarium, at least adjacent to there. You can see a little bit of whitecap starting to develop out there. We'll watch this camera all day long, and what you'll notice are those conditions are going to get rapidly worse and worse, and the tide levels are going to get higher and higher, especially as we go toward lunchtime, high tide around noon today. Now, we do have hurricane warnings once again up and down the coast. Those were issued yesterday. No change this morning. What we're watching this morning is Hurricane Ian at an 85-mile-per-hour Category 1 hurricane, so there has been some minor strengthening since yesterday evening. Now, 85-mile-per-hour winds are not going to be felt by everybody. Usually those are in a very isolated location, the strongest wind gust up to that, which means for a lot of you, I think you should expect tropical storm force winds today with gusts maybe along the coast in the worst spots of the beaches, especially north of Charleston, maybe up to hurricane force. Northeasterly motion. Now that still takes it almost as you take a look at the longitude with Charleston just to the east. So unless this bends back a lot, this is likely to make landfall just to the north of Charleston So that puts it in the area from Isle of Palms, Dewey's, going up to Capers, going up to Cape Romaine. By the way, just an interesting point. Ian made landfall at Cayo Costa down in Florida, southwest Florida. That's the same exact landfall point that Hurricane Charlie made. Hurricane Charlie back in 2004 also made a landfall at Cape Romaine. So these could have the same two landfalling spots that the other one had. So that's just an interesting note that we'll be watching today. There still continues to be an eastern nudge, so it's not out of the question that this comes on shore somewhere up towards Pawleys Island, Surfside Beach. So we'll watch those trends. That is important because of the surge. I'll explain that in a minute. But the worst weather for us through 5 o'clock, you can see rainfall totals will vary based on exactly where you're at. Farther south, less amount of rainfall. The farther north you are, a little bit heavier rainfall. So certainly a lot of rain on the way for today. How about the winds? Well, inland areas, we're thinking peak gusts to about 60 miles per hour, a little bit stronger along the coast where we may see up to hurricane force wind gusts, especially farther north you are. And 4 to 7 feet rather, that's the storm surge. That's worst case scenario north of where the center comes on shore. There will be a much lower amount of surge farther south. In fact, not much at all. High tide is at noon in the Charleston Harbor. So right now, kind of a blanket forecast of 4 to 7 feet. But let me show you the reason why. With the wind out of the northeast right now, notice this is blowing kind of offshore. So what happens is as we have those wind gusts pick up this morning, that's very important because an offshore wind doesn't allow that surge to come in. So it kind of blocks getting that worst case scenario out towards our beaches and really anywhere near a waterway that's tidal influenced. And Future Tracker does show as we go through lunchtime, notice these gusts getting really gusty out there, so it's going to get noisy. But that wind is still offshore in the Charleston Harbor based on the center circulation coming on shore in upper Charleston, Georgetown County. So there will not be a significant storm surge in downtown Charleston, Charleston Harbor if the storm comes ashore north of Charleston. So that landfalling point is going to be very important. And then the winds start to die down pretty quickly as we go into this evening. Things will start to improve. Let's go over to Chris Holtzman. See what's going on with that rainfall. I know a lot of folks at home maybe starting to hear that rain hit the windows a little bit more, starting to pick up a little bit.
Yeah, it really is, Joey. We are tracking a very heavy rain starting to push on shore. We've been tracking this for the past day as it was meandering over the Atlantic. And what you can clearly see is plenty of red, and that's indicating very heavy rain stretching all the way from the Grand Strand down into our area. So we'll zoom on in. You can see Seabrook Island. We're in some of that very deep red. Edisto Beach, Hollywood, Ravenel, and right over the Tri-County areas where we have that heavy rain falling. So just the beginning of the activity. Again, we're expecting several hours of very heavy rain right over North Charleston, Mount Pleasant, downtown, West Ashley, and then our barrier islands as well. Georgetown seeing some very heavy rain along with Pawleys Island. So we'll zoom out. We'll put this into motion again. We still have all of this moisture streaming in off the Atlantic. So this is just the beginning of the rain. You can even see some lightning as well offshore. That's, of course, where the Gulf Stream is. That's allowing this storm to intensify, and that's why this is a hurricane. Category 1 hurricane. Might not look like it on radar, but again, wind speed-wise, it has verified as that. But we are watching the center of the storm well offshore. So I have drawn it in the map here, and you can see this is the center. So this still has to move on shore, and that's why we're expecting several hours of very heavy rain with the wind. In terms of what to expect with rainfall, a wide swath of several inches of rain, a sharp cutoff, though, to our west, and that's where that rain shield likely won't make it on shore, at least the heaviest of the rain. But we are looking at totals of at least, once again, 4 to 7 inches of rain with some locally higher amounts. And we are watching the flooding threat. Again, you can see those areas in red. That is a high risk of flash flooding. We do have a flood watch in effect for the entire area. And again, that's because this rainfall, we could see several inches per hour rainfall in some of the heaviest of the bands, especially late this morning as the center of Ian moves on shore. So again, our 7-day forecast, we do have that first alert weather day today. Temperatures likely stuck in the 60s for most of us. Improving conditions over the weekend, so that's the good news. And we'll see those temperatures by next week in the 70s.
Coming up, as the storm passed through Florida, it left millions of dollars of damage in its wake. The companies and people stepping up to donate money to help those impacted by the storm.
And ahead of the worst of the storm, Dorchester Paws was looking for emergency homes for animals, but the community stepped up to the plate. How many animals were able to be fostered?
In November, we'll vote on whether to hold a risky constitutional convention. A convention opens Alaska's entire constitution for unlimited change. Hunting and fishing, privacy rights, guns, access to public lands. We could lose big. No single issue is worth opening this Pandora's box. A convention is just too risky. This November, vote no on ballot measure 1.
This communication was paid for by No One One Defend Our Constitution. The top 3 contributors are 1630 Fund, NEA, Alaska PACE, and IBEW PAC.
Welcome back. We continue to cover Hurricane Ian as it approaches our coastline this morning. Still located about 170 miles to the south of Charleston. We are looking at rain starting to pick up in Charleston County, parts of Berkeley, up into Georgetown, Williamsburg County as well. Some thunderstorms offshore. These storms firing up out over the Gulf Stream. So there's really warm water offshore. The water's actually cooled down close to the coast over the last week or so. Temperatures have dropped below 80 degrees. That is not very favorable for storm. So it'll be interesting to see once this storm gets to almost our latitude and it starts to run from warm water, really warm water, into the water that's actually below the threshold to maintain hurricanes, kind of how that unfolds today. But nonetheless, we are looking at a hurricane located well down to our south. Center circulation not very well defined there on the radar this morning. This is coming north with lots of heavy rain. The wind's going to be picking up this morning. You can see those bands of downpours passing through. The wind's going to be primarily out of the north, so it's going to be a little bit chilly out there. Temperatures in the 50s and low 60s this morning. Doesn't feel very tropical-like, but we have to keep an eye on where that center comes on shore. North of that, there'll be significant storm surge. South of that, storm surge threat will be much, much lower, so that is going to be crucial. Right now, Future Tracker showing somewhere perhaps around the Georgetown County area, but heavy rain, very gusty winds. We're talking 40 40, 50, 60 miles per hour, maybe gusts along the coast a little bit higher than that. But things improve as we go into this evening. So here's the potential for tropical storm force winds today. You can see a lot of you locked in at 100%. As far as the hurricane force winds, who has the greatest potential for that? We are seeing wind gust potential the greatest, basically from the Charleston area northward. Wouldn't be surprised if this has shifted a little bit farther north. We'll continue to follow that and keep you updated throughout the morning. Katie?
Thanks, Joey. As Hurricane Ian barrels toward the coast as a Category 1 hurricane, several communities made their final preparations hours before the storm arrived. Last night, the city of Georgetown gave out around 6 tons of sand to folks in the area. Workers and city council members, including the mayor, helped fill dozens of sandbags along Front Street to any person who drove up. We spoke to one man who said he got sand just in case that storm surge and flooding creeps up to his family's home.
Just normal day, like when it rains, it floods a little bit. But I can imagine when this storm come in, what it's going to do if it rains and storm and wind come through. We'd be in a lot worse trouble.
Our Ray Urena will be live from Pawleys Island beginning at 5 o'clock this morning with a live look at how the storm is impacting that area.
In downtown Charleston yesterday was a day of preparation as people prepared their houses and businesses for the storm. Tourists and locals alike say they feel like they have had time to prepare for what's coming and heed the warnings about moving their cars and staying indoors. People who have lived through other hurricanes in Charleston say they know where to avoid and know to listen to officials about how to stay safe. Some tourists still spent the day yesterday enjoying downtown, but most are making plans safely to get back home and away from the storm.
We're staying down here, so we keep hearing it floods. So, and we fly out tomorrow, maybe if the weather lets us get out. And so we're thinking that we should probably move our car and maybe get a place by the airport, just so we don't get stuck down here with the flooding.
The fire department has also high water rescue vehicles placed throughout the city in case of any emergency rescues. Now, city leaders are telling residents to find a safe place and stay put.
CBS News has confirmed at least 6 deaths in Florida are being blamed on Hurricane Ian.
And rescue crews across the state, they're continuing to work to save people who could be trapped in flooded homes and buildings left in ruins. CBS News correspondent Christian Benavides is in Kissimmee, Florida, with more.
Near Fort Myers, search and rescue teams brought residents of Sanibel and Captiva to safety and scoured the barrier islands for signs of life.
So people that were surprised by how quickly the storm turned and ended up being trapped.
Hurricane Ian's massive storm surge ripped away large parts of the Sanibel Causeway, cutting off access by land. Across Florida, the destruction can be seen from the air for miles around. At the storm's peak, Naples Fire and Rescue had to break the window of this car to pull a woman to safety. Throughout much of the state, people are assessing their losses and counting their blessings.
I'm trying to be brave.
After Ian made landfall as a Category 4 hurricane Wednesday with sustained winds of 150 miles per hour, it tore apart this Fort Myers trailer park.
I literally watched my house disappear with everything in it.
In this Central Florida retirement community yesterday afternoon, airboats with rescue crews were a welcome sight.
I didn't realize they had a storm until they told me. I was asleep.
Here in Kissimmee near Orlando, the city has implemented a mandatory curfew from 9 p.m. to 6 a.m. because of major flooding. In all, the county says Ian dropped more than a foot of rain.
We're going to do our best to build Florida back as quickly as possible, but we're not going to be leaving.
At FEMA headquarters in Washington, President Biden said as soon as conditions allow, he will visit Florida and Puerto Rico, which was ravaged by Hurricane Fiona just days ago. Christian Benavides, CBS News, Kissimmee, Florida.
And the economic hit to the region from tourism alone is expected to reach into the billions. One analyst tells CBS News in all, those losses could reach $60 to $70 billion, which would rank it among the most destructive storms ever to hit the U.S.
The owners of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and quarterback Tom Brady say they're donating toward Hurricane Ian relief efforts. Brady said in a Twitter post yesterday that he hopes the rest of the NFL family in the state will follow suit. The amount of Brady's donation was not disclosed. The Glazer family, who owns the team, says it will donate $1 million to support those who've been most impacted by the storm in the state. Sunday night's Buccaneers game against the Kansas City Chiefs will be played as scheduled in Raymond James Stadium in Tampa. That game is set to kick off at 8:20 p.m. Eastern Time.
Retail giants Target and Walmart, they're making major donations to the hurricane relief recovery efforts. Now, yesterday, Target announced plans to donate $5 million. The donation will be focused on the immediate needs of residents, providing food, water, and other essentials. Target says in its release, this is the largest disaster donation in company history. Walmart president and CEO John Furner said that yesterday his company will donate up to $6 million for recovery and relief efforts. That will include both cash, grants, and donations of essential supplies.
Well, check out this video of an apartment building in Naples, Florida during Hurricane Ian. The sheer power of floodwater from the hurricane bursts open this door. Radu Marjanyan was visiting with his wife from Tampa because the storm was originally expected to hit there. He says shortly after the water broke the door down, it rose above his head and carried him up the stairs. The force then tried to drag him back down, which he resisted by holding onto a guardrail.
It looks like a bomb went off here, to be honest with you. It's beyond what I thought was capable of happening.
Very scary. Well, Dorchester Paws, they say they sent more than 170 animals off campus in less than 48 hours to prepare for the hurricane. Whether the animals were rescued, emergency fostered, or taken home by staff for the long weekend, they're out of harm's way. The community responded to the animal shelter's urge for fosters with a long line of cars that backed up to Highway 78, with some people waiting for around an hour. Still ahead, as Southwest Floridians begin to survey the damage left in the wake of the storm, the Federal Emergency Management Agency is jumping into action. What they're doing to help relief efforts.
And President Biden has ordered federal assistance to South Carolina as Ian is set to hit our coast, what that means for our state.
Sherlock Singh?
Good day, madam.
I was...
Injured, perhaps in a car wreck.
Yes, and I need help.
Most likely injury-related, judging from the 9 medical bills in your hand.
Yes, and I
need the experience of George Sink injury lawyers to help get your money faster.
Mr. Sink, how did you ever manage to help her get a check so fast?
Experience, my dear Watson. Years of experience. George Sink injury lawyers. Call all 9s now.
Track.
It's the all-new Subway Series menu. 12 irresistible new subs. The most epic sandwich roster ever created. It's Subway's biggest refresh yet.
All right, 427, waking up and getting started here early on our Friday morning. Hurricane warnings do continue from basically just north of Savannah all the way up into the Grand Strand. These warnings mean that hurricane-force wind gusts are possible as we go through this morning. I think the highest chance is going to be the farther north along the coast you are. And here's the reason why. Hurricane Ian right now, a Category 1 hurricane with winds at 85 miles per hour. Now, this is moving to the north-northeast still at 10 miles per hour. It has passed our longitude in the Charleston Harbor, which means it's slightly east of Charleston. So it would have to turn back to the west for a little while, and what's not happened yet, for it to make a landfall in the Charleston Harbor area. So that means there's an increasing chance that this makes landfall just to the north of Charleston, maybe in Upper Charleston, Georgetown County, up in Horry County. As a Category 1 hurricane, that would happen around the midday hours today. Here's the latest look on the radar right now. And I do want to point out that even if it makes a landfall here and you're in Somerville and Waltesboro, we still expect tropical storm conditions. It just means the core of the strongest winds and the storm surge would be displaced farther north along the coast. You can see that rain picking up in the yellow here. So the downpours have started. The rainfall intensity has picked up over the last 1 and 2 hours. And the wind gusts are starting to get up to about 40 miles per hour. We're seeing gusts just offshore here at some of our offshore buoys, now over 40 miles per hour. In fact, the center of circulation, we can kind of draw it in here, see how far. It looks like we're right about there, about 135 miles south of the Charleston Harbor right now. Here's a look at the radar, and look at this west edge. This is going to be a sharp cutoff, most likely I-95 east with the heaviest rain, also the gustiest winds as this comes northward. And future trackers showing that painted in here in the yellow and the orange and the red. There's that heaviest rainfall. Now, the winds, I think, will peak and the rain intensity will peak late this morning through early this afternoon. That's as this storm comes on shore. Notice the center circulation painted in right here based on our latest future tracker model. Do want to point out, though, some of these bands we're seeing in the computer models early this afternoon. I'd say 2 to 4 o'clock could have the strongest winds on the back side of this before this starts to pull northward. Now, I think after 4 o'clock, the winds really start to die down. And then by this evening, it's still going to be breezy out there, but the bulk of it's going to be out of here. So the worst of it through 5 o'clock, I think. Rainfall totals will vary, but on average, I think for most of you, 3 to 6 inches could exceed that in some spots, especially on the northern coast. Peak gusts 60 miles per hour inland, gusts to hurricane force along our beaches, and 4 to 7 feet of storm surge. But once again, that's going to be north of wherever that center comes on shore, much less farther south. High tides at noon. We'll be watching it closely. We'll have more coming up in a few minutes. Aisha.
Well, we're getting an understanding of the extent of the catastrophic damage left in Florida in the wake of Hurricane Ian.
Agencies at every level are working to get assistance where it's needed. Mike Valerio has more on those efforts.
Everything's flooded. Everything is ruined. As Floridians begin to survey the damage left in the wake of Hurricane Ian, the Federal Emergency Management Agency jumps into action.
We're focused right now on getting some search and rescue teams who have been out since 4 o'clock this morning to get into that area and identify who might need assistance.
FEMA, the U.S. Coast Guard, and other entities are working by land, air, and sea.
Coast Guard deployed 16 rescue helicopters, 6 fixed-wing aircraft, and 18 rescue boats and crews.
President Joe Biden promising the full support of the federal government after attending a briefing at FEMA headquarters.
We've dispatched over 1,000 FEMA personnel and prepositioned major federal capacities and capabilities and supplies.
And approving a major disaster declaration for the state.
That means the federal government will cover 100% of the cost to clear debris and for all the costs that the state has to engage in and expend to save lives.
The declaration also makes federal aid available, including grants to help individuals and business owners in 9 counties recover from the effects of the disaster. Help desperately needed for the families displaced by Hurricane Ian.
We are preparing for the potential of thousands of families that are going to need assistance.
And yesterday, President Biden ordered federal assistance to South Carolina as the storm is set to hit here in the Lowcountry. Now, the move authorizes the Department of Homeland Security and the Federal Emergency Management Agency to coordinate all disaster relief efforts. That includes efforts to help alleviate hardships caused by the storm. It also authorizes the Federal Emergency Management Agency to provide all equipment and resources necessary to help recovery efforts in the wake of Ian.
We're continuing to monitor conditions as Hurricane Ian gets closer to making landfall in our state.
We go back out to Folly Beach where Molly McBride is. She's been watching those conditions out there. Molly, has anything changed where you are?
Yeah, right now we're at Folly Beach on Center Street, standing in front of Rita's. As you can see right next to me, they have some sandbags placed in front of their door along with the tarp, just working to prevent any potential flooding that might come their way. As you can see down Center Street, it's really empty down here. We've only seen about 1 or 2 cars total. It really looks like everybody's hunkered down, preparing for the storm that's headed their way as the wind and the rain continues to pick up around me. Of course, we'll keep you updated. We'll be down here all morning with the freshest updates for you. Reporting live on Folly Beach, I'm Molly McBride, Live 5 News.
All right, we continue to watch Hurricane Ian, located over 100 miles to the south of Charleston. Right now is a Category 1 hurricane. We do expect a landfall as we go later this morning or early this afternoon. We'll have a full breakdown on what you can expect today coming up.
In November, we'll vote on whether to hold a risky constitutional convention. A convention opens Alaska's entire constitution for unlimited change. Hunting and fishing, privacy rights, guns, access to public lands. We could lose big. No single issue is worth opening this Pandora's box. A convention is just too risky. This November, vote no on ballot measure 1.
This communication was paid for by No One Defend Our Constitution. The top 3 contributors are 1630 Fund, NEA, Alaska PACE, and IBEW PAC.
In November, we'll vote on whether to hold a risky constitutional convention. A convention opens Alaska's entire constitution for unlimited change. Hunting and fishing, privacy rights, guns, access to public lands. We could lose big. No single issue is worth opening this Pandora's box. A convention is just too risky. This November, vote no on ballot measure 1.
This communication was paid for by No One Defend Our Constitution. The top 3 contributors are 1630 Fund, NEA, Alaska PACE, and IBEW PAC.
We continue to track Hurricane Ian this morning. I'm meteorologist Joey Sovine here on a First Alert Weather Day. We gave you that first alert back on Monday. We made Friday a First Alert Weather Day. We knew weather would go downhill, and we would certainly get the impacts here from a storm that has quite the track record. Thankfully not as strong here as it was down in Florida, but it certainly is going to make for a pretty rough day as far as the wind and the rain. We've been seeing that out of this camera. This is looking from the South Carolina Aquarium downtown. Wind that's coming right into kind of the shoreline here along the river. Just up from there at the Ravenel Bridge, just saw a recorded wind gust up over 40 miles per hour, so up to tropical storm strength. Hurricane warnings in effect up and down the coastline. It does look like the farther north we go, the greater the impacts will be today from Hurricane Ian, as it now has winds at 85 miles per hour, moving to the north and northeast, located almost due south, just east of due south, which means that if this just comes northward, a landfall would still be north of the Charleston area, still jogging a little bit east of north. So we'll kind of watch that, kind of wobbles and whatnot with this storm system as it approaches the coast. But that puts this forecast track, best guess of where this comes on shore, right around midday hours, maybe around 1 o'clock or so, from Isle of Palms all the way up to Myrtle Beach. So somewhere in there, the forecast track. And remember, the center and to the north of it is where the storm storm surge will be the greatest, forecast 4 to 7 feet. So it is significant determining where that landfall and seeing where that landfall occurs. South of there, storm surge will be much different because we'll have a offshore wind on the backside of this storm system. Here's a look at the radar right now. You see all this yellow and orange. That wasn't there about an hour and a half ago. The rain's been picking up in intensity as anticipated as we got towards sunrise, which we still have a ways to go, but that rain will continue to pick up. The wind's going to get a little bit gustier as well. And we're watching some heavier cells offshore. These are running about 50 miles. That thunderstorm right there, about 50 miles off of our coastline, out over much warmer waters, the Gulf Stream waters, which sit about 50 miles out from the Charleston Harbor. Here's a look at the radar this morning. Notice the western edge. So on the west side of this, there's a really sharp cutoff west of I-95 from basically really heavy rainfall and gusty winds to just breezy conditions and no rainfall. But the center's coming northward, and we do expect a landfalling hurricane between Charleston and Myrtle Beach later this morning and into early this afternoon. So the rain's picked up. It will continue to come in and out. Now, I think the heaviest rain and the gustiest winds start to come in later this morning towards 10 o'clock. You notice all this heavy rainfall. This shows the forecast, the landfall right here around the Georgetown County area. We'll continue to watch that. Rough conditions through early this afternoon. As the afternoon wears on, especially as we get into evening, this lifts north of our area. So heavy rainfall, certainly a concern today. If you don't have to travel, don't travel. There will be some flooded roads out there. Damaging winds. There will be some trees that come down today. We're also watching flooding surge, obvious concern. Tornado risk is low right now. I think most of that concern is going to be a little bit farther to the north. You can see power outages. That's something we'll watch. In fact, we can show you, this is cool technology as we go through today and into early this afternoon. You saw orange blips there. That indicated where we see that kind of potential for some power outages to go up a little bit. So that is something we'll be keeping an eye on. A lot of that is going to be tied into how gusty those winds get. But also because of heavy rainfall, that ground's going to become increasingly saturated as we go through the day, and that may lead to some of those trees coming down a little bit quicker. Let's go over to Chris Holtzman right now as he continues to watch the winds. And the winds are going to be really important, Chris, today, as we always see with these storms. Wind direction, very important because of the storm surge element. Also, if you start to get shifting winds, so the beginning of a storm's one direction, and then the second half's a different direction, that has a tendency to also kind of add to the force, kind of loosening up the soil around some of those trees. So that is something obviously we'll be watching closely today.
Yeah, it certainly is something we'll be watching. Remember, when you add all that rain to the ground, of course, it gets wet. The roots of the trees sometimes loosen up a little bit. And when we have those rainfall rates approaching 1 inch to 2 inches per hour in some of these heaviest bands, that's why there is a concern for some trees to come down, which of course could fall on top of power lines. But wind speeds, I mean, nothing extreme in terms of sustained wind right now. We are looking around 5 to 25 miles per hour. However, the gusts are what we're looking out for, and we are seeing those gusts offshore. Look at that. You can see those reds and purples indicating wind speeds of around certainly close to 30 to 40 miles per hour. So here's our wind gust speed sustained at around 40 miles per hour along the coast. Remember, the strongest of the wind will be felt along our barrier islands and then over the open waters where you lose the friction effect. But we are looking at, once again, gusts up to 35 to 40 miles per hour. That includes those of us in Georgetown, where we could be looking at a potential landfall there. McClellanville, gusts up to 35 miles per hour. Beaufort reporting 40 miles per hour. We had a gust in the harbor, at least near it, close to around 50 to 60 miles per hour. So our wind gust tracker is showing that the strongest of the wind, again, will be felt in the early afternoon and late morning, and that's with the center of the storm coming close to us. So again, we are looking at winds perhaps gusting up to 65, 70, maybe 80 miles per hour. You get the strongest winds right around the eye. That's the eye wall. You also get some very heavy rain. So depending on where the center of the storm will track, that'll dictate the strongest of the wind. But again, we are looking at that potential for those gusts along the immediate coast up to 60 to 80 miles per hour. Now this model, you can see this is forecasting a landfall right between Georgetown and also Charleston, the McClellanville area. That's why you see a dramatic drop off in the wind, of course, with the eye of the storm storm. That's where you have the calm wind and even clear sky, but then quickly it fills back up on the backside of the eye with strong wind. So anywhere in this eye here, that's where the wind will drastically drop. And then eventually on the backside of the system for tonight, we'll start to see the winds come down with gusts up to about perhaps 30 to 40 miles per hour. And then into Saturday morning, we will see improvement. Want to show you also our rainfall forecast. You will see a sharp cutoff on the west side of the storm. That's where these bands will have a hard time making it. And that's mainly right along the South Carolina-Georgia border. But you notice east of it where these tropical bands move on shore, that's where we're forecasting a rainfall totals between about 3 to maybe 8 inches of rain. Of course, some of that falling within the span of just a few hours. So, of course, we're going to continue to track the storm. We'll have the latest information on it coming up in just a few minutes.
If you or someone you know needs shelter during the storm, Live 5 is on your side with those locations. Deputies from the Charleston County Sheriff's Office Animal Control Unit are staffing a pet-friendly shelter. It's located in the Bond Court building on Leeds Avenue in North Charleston. Deputies say the shelter is only for people with pets. Those without pets who need a shelter are asked to use the one that's in place at Dunston Elementary. That's on Remount Road in North Charleston. According to the state's emergency management website, there is also an emergency shelter in place in Ridgeland. That shelter is pet-friendly and will be at the Ridgeland High Junior Elementary Complex on Jaguar Trail.
And if you decided to store your car in one of the free open parking garages, we do want to remind you when you need to pick that car up following the storm. City of Charleston officials say cars must be out of the garages by 5 p.m. Saturday. Those parked at the garage on 90 Cumberland Street will need to pick up their cars by noon tomorrow.
CARTA has announced all service is suspended today due to Ian's expected impacts. CARTA officials say service may resume tomorrow, but that is depending on the weather conditions and the impact of the storm. State leaders say their teams are working around the clock as Ian approaches the state. What the governor had to say about being prepared for the storm.
The South Carolina Department of Transportation is preparing for Ian to hit our state. What they're doing to work to maintain the safety of the state's roads and bridges.
I saw Elvis's Bible.
Yep, we have Elvis's Bible, along with Bibles from a number of other kings. But that's just the beginning. Museum of the Bible. What's in it will surprise you.
Who is Elvis anyway?
In November, we'll vote on whether to hold a risky constitutional convention. A convention opens Alaska's entire constitution for unlimited change. Hunting and fishing, privacy rights, guns, access to public lands. We could lose big. No single issue is worth opening this Pandora's box. A convention is just too risky. This November, vote no on ballot measure 1.
This communication was paid for by No One One Defend Our Constitution. The top 3 contributors are 1630 Fund, NEA Alaska PACE, and IBEW PAC.
All right, well, good morning, everyone. We are tracking Hurricane Ian, and you're starting to see that rain pick up. And with the wind, it's a wind-driven rain. In fact, as we look at live Super Doppler Max, we're starting to see some of those bright reds pop up, and that's indicating very heavy rain. So we'll zoom on in, see who's seeing activity right now. Those of us for Edisto, also a Seabrook, Hollywood, Ravenel, West Ashley. You have that moderate to heavy rain. Some of these bands of tropical moisture moving on shore. Also looking as I step off frame because I want to show you just how bright that rain is. The reds popping up right in North Charleston. Also at downtown Mount Pleasant, right up to Georgetown County where we could have landfall of this system somewhere between Charleston and even Myrtle Beach. But we're looking at the storm as it's rotating on shore. You can see some of that rapid intensification. The Gulf Stream about 50 miles off our coast, and that's why the system has strengthened and it will work into some of that warmer ocean water. But right now we are looking at that wall of water moving on, and this is just the beginning of the activity. We're expecting at least through the afternoon that heavy rain to continue. The center of the storm, there it is, a couple hundred miles offshore. Not a typical looking hurricane here, but the center of the storm, this will continue to push closer to the coast, and until that center passes, we're still expecting that very heavy rain and the wind. In fact, looking at our tropical tracker, winds of 85 miles per hour. This is a Category 1 hurricane. We'll put this into motion again. The track of the center will dictate what impact we see in terms of the storm surge anywhere north and east of that system. That's where you get the strongest wind and most of the storm surge because the flow is on shore. Now, to the west side of the system, we are looking at a less impact of storm surge as that flow is mainly offshore. But again, we have to watch when the heaviest of the rain is falling during high tide, but forecast to make landfall at some point between Charleston and, say, Myrtle Beach. So as we continue through the day, you will see those bands of tropical moisture moving on shore. Here's the eye wall likely right here. Again, we get the strongest wind, very heavy rain as well, and these bands of moisture on the backside of the system early in the afternoon. That's when we'll still see that heavy rain, and then eventually we will start to see improvement late Friday. But total rainfall to exceed, we are expecting several inches of rain through at least Saturday morning. And that's why we do have that concern for flooding.
State leaders say the state's Emergency Operations Center will be running 24-hour operations today, remaining in contact with local emergency management agencies as this storm comes through. Here are some videos and photos of the devastation this storm has left behind in Florida, now on its way toward South Carolina. Governor Henry McMaster says people who live in low-lying areas especially need to be ready to know where they'll go if it becomes unsafe to stay at home. The governor says they're always concerned about complacency and if South Carolinians are not prepared or taking this storm seriously.
There's a little bit of wiggle room in exactly how strong the rain is and how strong the wind will be. But the biggest variable is human reaction, is people failing to take the necessary precautions. That's the real danger that we have is human error.
The South Carolina Department of Transportation says people should avoid traveling as much as possible today.
With periods of sustained tropical force winds and heavy rain expected throughout the state today, the South Carolina Department of Transportation is working to maintain the safety of the state's roads and bridges. Among the steps that SCDOT takes before the storm arrives, going to flood-prone areas and making sure drainage ditches are clean so that they'll hold as much rain as possible when the storm picks up. The majority of the work for SCDOT, though, is after the storm passes. Crews will be stationed around the state, clearing any possible trees or other debris from the roadways.
We're the first responders, more or less, so to speak, after the storm, because if the power is knocked out to certain areas and the power companies can't get in because the roads are blocked by trees or other debris, we need to get those roads cleared so that they can get in there and get to work.
Dominion Energy is ready to work to keep your lights on if today's storm impacts the power across the state. They say this is something they prep for year-round, which includes help from extra crews if needed. Officials say 200 Dominion Energy crews from different states are on standby. The plan is for the crews to be staged with their equipment throughout the Midlands, but they can't start working until it's safe to do so. That means if the storm is still in full effect with high winds, crews will have to wait until those conditions clear before responding to outage calls, which could take days. Now, I want you to take a good look at your screen here, or even take a picture of this. These are the phone numbers to call to report any outages. You can see Dominion, Berkeley Electric, and Santee Cooper there, as well as some others. You can let your power company know of any outages you might experience once Ian makes landfall.
And here at home in the Lowcountry, fire crews and law enforcement officials are telling people to avoid any flooded areas, whether you're on foot or in a car. Officials say avoiding these areas can not only help you, but also helps first responders. According to authorities, once the water level gets to a certain point, first responders have to evaluate that situation for their own safety before assisting. Officials also say fire departments tend to see many floating motorcycles during floods, so make sure if you do have a motorcycle, you store it properly.
Telecommunications giant Comcast is helping out in the midst of the storm. The company says it's opened up upwards of 200,000 Xfinity Wi-Fi hotspots in Alabama, Florida, Georgia, and right here in South Carolina. The move is meant to help people stay connected during Ian. The public hotspots are available for free to everyone, including non-Xfinity customers. Roughly 90,000 of those hotspots are in Florida, where hundreds of thousands of people are still without electricity. A map of public Xfinity Wi-Fi hotspots is available on our website. Just head to live5news.com and look under that big red box.
Well, the most magical place on earth is planning to start welcoming guests again. Walt Disney World is reopening today as the storm moved out of the Orlando area. Theme parks, Disney Springs operations will open in a phased approach. No specific timing was released. Disney was not the only popular attraction to close up shop ahead of Ian. Now, SeaWorld Orlando and Universal Orlando also closed their theme parks yesterday as well as Wednesday. Now, SeaWorld plans to reopen tomorrow, while Universal aims to open today.
We're taking a live look at Center Street at Folly Beach as the storm gets closer. Our Molly McBride will give us an update on the conditions there when we return.
And stay in the know with First Alert weather, this storm, and any other weather event on our social media platforms. The usernames are right there on your screen. Also, make sure to check out our brand new weather-related TikTok.
In November, we'll vote on whether to hold a risky constitutional convention. A convention opens Alaska's entire constitution for unlimited change. Hunting and fishing, privacy rights, guns, access to public lands. We could lose big. No single issue is worth opening this Pandora's box. A convention is just too risky. This November, vote no on ballot measure 1.
This communication was paid for by No One One Defend Our Constitution. The top 3 contributors are 1630 Fund, NEA, Alaska PACE, and IBEW PAC.
In November, we'll vote on whether to hold a risky constitutional convention. A convention opens Alaska's entire constitution for unlimited change. Hunting and fishing, privacy rights, guns, access to public lands. We could lose big. No single issue is worth opening this Pandora's box. A convention is just too risky. This November, vote no on ballot measure 1.
This communication was paid for by No One One Defend Our Constitution. The top 3 contributors are 1630 Fund, NEA Alaska PACE, and IBEW PAC.
Well, good Friday morning, everyone. Most of you have seen wind and rain overnight as the low country prepares for Ian to make landfall later today.
Our weather team has declared today a first alert weather day, and we'll have updates for you throughout the morning.
We'll also have team coverage out in the field in various locations across the low country today to keep you up to date on how those storm conditions could affect your area.
Our meteorologists, Joy Sylvine and Chris Holtzman, will be monitoring the storm right here in our studio.
Live 5's Molly McBride will be reporting live on the conditions on Folly Beach, and Ray Urena will be in Georgetown doing the same.
Our traffic anchor, Alicia Wimberly, will also keep you updated on the road conditions and any closures that are in effect. For now, let's turn it over to our first alert weather team.
Let's check in with meteorologist Joey Sovine first. So, Joey, what can you tell us about Ian so far?
Yeah, good morning, ladies. Let's hop right into it. Show you a live view right now out of downtown Charleston where rain is coming down. The wind's starting to pick up a bit, and starting to see some wave action starting to pick up a little bit there. Adjacent to the South Carolina Aquarium, the Columbus Street Terminal. We'll be watching that camera. We'll have a better view, of course, once we get a little bit of daylight out there. And those winds pick up, especially later this morning and into this afternoon. Hurricane warnings do continue up and down the South Carolina coast. Hurricane Ian with maximum sustained winds at 85 miles per hour, according to the National Hurricane Center. This is actually transitioning out of being a tropical system, starting to become a little bit more extratropical. Technicality doesn't really matter a whole lot. Just doesn't mean that it means that we don't expect a lot of further strengthening, thankfully so, as this is plenty strong enough. Moving to the northeast, now the forecast track, this is the latest from the National Hurricane Center, brings this on shore early this afternoon to mid-afternoon, depending on exactly where it comes on shore. A little bit quicker farther south, a little bit later farther north, but somewhere between, I'd say, the Isle of Palms and up into the Myrtle Beach area. So that forecast track being the worst storm surge, most likely, from somewhere in upper Charleston County into Georgetown, Horry County, but we have to watch that very closely. It could be farther south, depending on where that center comes on shore. Heavy rainfall starting to pick up where you see the yellow and red. It'll kind of ebb and flow. So it'll be pouring for a little while. You'll ease up. It'll get a little quieter outside, and then that rain will pick back up. That's going to be the off and on nature today with this heavy rainfall out there. But keep in mind that the wind's going to ramp up later this morning, and that's when we're going to likely start to get a few power outages out there. I think the peak of the winds as this comes on shore are going to be early to mid-afternoon, and then things will rapidly get better as we go into this evening. Let's go over to Chris Holtzman as we'll be kind of hanging out together, getting us through this, watching those winds this morning, starting to see those gusts pick up, especially in our offshore areas, and eventually I'm sure that's going to come on shore.
Yeah, we certainly are, Joey, especially right along the coast. You could start to see some of these purples popping up, and that's indicating gusts up to 60, 70 miles per hour. But along the coast, we do have the sustained wind right now up to about 10 to 25 miles per hour. And that is picking up as the center of Ian is approaching our area. Now, let me show you our wind gusts. And you could see gusts up to about 40 miles per hour or so along our immediate coast. Offshore, we have seen gusts up to 60, even 65 miles per hour. That's where the strongest of the winds will be. But again, we're going to look for those winds to pick up later this morning as the center of Ian approaches our area, mainly early this afternoon. So our wind gust forecast you see right now by around 7 o'clock, gusts up to 40 to 50 miles per hour. One threat we have to talk about as well, when we're looking at that rainfall, we are looking at to the ground, those roots of the trees kind of loosening up. And when you add some of these wind gusts to it, we could have some downed trees, and that's why our power outage threat is there today. But again, the strongest of the winds will likely be felt late this morning into the afternoon with gusts up to about 60 miles per hour. Again, this model depicts a landfall at some point between Charleston and also Georgetown. Winds should start to die down in the afternoon, at least with gusts up to 30 to 40 miles per hour, and then we'll start to see more improvement overnight tonight. But of course, we'll have the latest information on the storm in just a few minutes.
Yeah, good morning, Joey, Chris, ladies. As of now, we're not expecting too many people on the roads, but what we are expecting is flooding. So we're going to be watching the roads for that this morning. So I want to go ahead and turn your attention to what we see right now. A live look out there. This is exactly what we're seeing. I mean, look at the rain. Look at the gust right now. This is just right by downtown, right as you pass Meeting Street. We're seeing lots of this rain, and obviously we're going to be watching the roads, informing you all just where flooding is going to be or where it might be happening. But I want to go ahead and inform you to turn around and don't drown. This is something that we have been enforcing. Now, if you do have to head out there, even though we're advising you not to, just please be careful. But if you do see flooding, we do have to tell you turn around and don't drown. That's the most important thing out there. Aisha.
As we mentioned, Live 5 will have team coverage throughout the day, keeping you updated on storm conditions across the low country.
Right now, we want to take you over to Folly Beach. Our Molly McBride is there now. So, Molly, what's it like out there so far?
Yeah, I'm on Center Street at Folly Beach, and as you can see, we're in front of Rita's where they have sandbags boarded up in front of their doors, some sort of tarp as well, doing their best to prevent against any potential flooding heading this way. Right now, no one's really out on the street. We're out here. We're going to be keeping you updated as the wind and the rain continues to pick up. Reporting live at Folly Beach, I'm Molly McBride, Live 5 News.
We're following some power outages now around the low country this morning. Dominion Energy reporting that over 5,300 people in South Carolina are currently experiencing outages. For reference, Dominion serves around 790,000 customers. According to Dominion's outage map, the Brighton Beach area near Bluffton has an outage with over 900 people affected. We're also seeing an outage impacting around 600 people in downtown Charleston near Hampton Park. The Burton area also has an outage for almost 700 customers. Dominion Energy recommends customers download the Dominion Energy app to report power outages and track restoration efforts. We'll be continuing to track outages throughout the morning.
Monitoring the storm throughout the morning and the rest of the day with reporters all around the low country. So stay with Live 5. Download the news and weather apps for all of the very latest updates.
And our Live 5 First Alert weather team will be working around the clock on all social media platforms to keep you in the know about Ian's path. Also, download the Live 5 weather app to stay up to date. It's free in your phone's app store.
In November, we'll vote on whether to hold a risky constitutional convention. A convention opens Alaska's entire constitution for unlimited change. Hunting and fishing, privacy rights, guns, access to public lands. We could lose big. No single issue is worth opening this Pandora's box. A convention is just too risky. This November, vote no on ballot measure 1.
This communication was paid for by No One Defend Our Constitution. The top 3 contributors are 1630 Fund, NEA, Alaska PACE, and IBEW PAC.
All right, welcome back. 5:09 the time right now, continuing to track the outer rain bands of Hurricane Ian that is located about 125 miles down to our south. Show that to you in a second, but you can see in the yellow here, that's where the rain picks up. Now, it is starting to push a little bit farther inland. So if you're in the Somerville area, Walterboro area, most of your rain overnight has been pretty light, but it is starting to pick up in intensity. And the heaviest rain is going to be from I-95 eastward. So we are expecting maybe 3 to 6, 4 to 8 inches of rainfall. As you can see, those heavy downpours moving on shore. And we're watching some even heavier rainfall now starting to propagate a little bit closer to the coast. There's the center of circulation right there with Ian, and it will continue to move northward, most likely a landfall between the Charleston area and Myrtle Beach. Still a bit of a question mark exactly where it comes on shore. That's going to put the worst storm surge, so the force of the water on top of the normal tide level is going to be highest, about 4 to maybe 7 feet in upper Charleston, Georgetown counties. So we'll watch the exact placement of that. It's going to be crucial to who gets storm surge today and who does not. You can see there's that center of circulation at 125 miles down to the south and southeast of Charleston. Here comes the rain. It will continue to pick up in intensity. In fact, the worst of the weather is likely between about 10 o'clock and about 4 o'clock. We do expect the heavy rainfall, the very strong winds out there, tropical storm up to hurricane force wind gust certainly are going to be a possibility through about 4 o'clock. After that, things will start to ease up and we'll be in a much better spot once we get into this evening. A lot more on Ian as we continue to track it coming up in just a few minutes. Let's go over to Alicia Wimberly. She's keeping an eye on the roads for you. I know most of you, thankfully.
Yeah, absolutely, Joey. So let's go ahead and take a look right at that traffic flow map. Just as you were talking about, if you're headed on I-95, we're just going to be seeing lots of green on that map. And that is obviously indicating all this rain, of course, due to Hurricane Ian. Taking you out there right now, this is what it's looking like over the Ravenel Bridge. We're seeing rain, we're seeing winds flowing. And I know this isn't the best view, but we're literally looking at what Hurricane Ian is impacting on us right now. We're going to continue to update you on that. We're just seeing green and blue on our traffic flow map, and we can see that here from I-95, just like you were saying, Joey. And look at this wide view of our Tri-County area. All of this blue is ponding, and we're seeing ponding throughout the entire Tri-County area. I mean, it's going to be continuous, and it's going to be spreading. So, of course, we're going to keep an eye out on these, and, of course, for potential flooding. So, as of now, we will keep an eye out on the roads, but please, again, be careful if you have to travel. Katie?
Well, as we mentioned, we'll be monitoring Ian's impact on communities across the Low Country. That's a live look right now from Pawleys Island. We'll hear from Ray Urena on the conditions out there. Coming up, stay with us.
In November, we'll vote on whether to hold a risky constitutional convention. A convention opens Alaska's entire constitution for unlimited change. Hunting and fishing, privacy rights, guns, access to public lands. We could lose big. No single issue is worth opening this Pandora's box. A convention is just too risky. This November, vote no on ballot measure 1.
This communication was paid for by No One to Defend Our Constitution. The top 3 contributors are 1630 Fund, NEA Alaska PACE, and IBEW PAC.
right, let's take a live view outside right now here as we continue to track Hurricane Ian. 5:15 on our Friday morning. By 5:15, the weather will be headed out of here, but we've got a ways to go with this storm, and you can see the rain kind of coming and going. The camera bouncing around a little bit. It's going to get windier and noisier outside. Just a heads up on that. I want you to not expect that this is the worst of it. I know you're hearing some wind out there, but once again, it's going to continue to increase as we go through this morning, really pick up later this morning. Right now, wind speeds out of the north, and it's sustained about 20 to 25 miles per hour for most of you. Starting to see some wind gusts creeping up a little bit towards tropical storm force. Tropical storm winds 39 miles per hour or greater. So that is something we're going to watch. Of course, we also have the potential of up to hurricane strength winds at 74 miles per hour or greater. Likely to be an isolated gust, not a widespread deal, but certainly it doesn't take 74 mile per hour winds to cause some trees to come down, some branches as well. We'll take a look at our power outage index and the forecast for today, when that best time would be to lose power today, coming up in just a minute. But you can see Hurricane Ian as the latest advisor if you're just waking up. Winds up to 85 miles per hour, so it has strengthened some, starting to lose some of its tropical characteristics, and the wind field starting to expand a little bit, so the wind's spreading out. But moving off to the north-northeast, right now it is past the longitude of Charleston, which means that it has to turn back to the west if it were to make landfall in the Charleston Harbor or point south. So that means that it is increasingly likely that it's going to be north of the Charleston Harbor. That helps out. There's still going to be some storm surge perhaps, but it will limit the extent of an onshore wind that is going to drive in the storm surge. So that's going to be an increasingly likely threat the farther north you go along the South Carolina coastline. But here we go with a landfall somewhere between Charleston and up into Myrtle Beach area, and the worst storm surge is along the center and to the north. So that's something we'll be watching. Forecast 4 to 7 feet at max of storm surge. So that's additional water on top of the normal tide level. So wherever the tide normally would be at that time of the day, if that's at high tide, it's certainly more important. And we have a lunchtime high tide today, so we are going to monitor that very closely. But that's 4 to 7 feet on top of the normal tide level. Here we go with the rain. You can see it coming in, and it's just going to continue on and on and on all morning long. It will be heavier at times than others, but it does look like it really ramps up late this morning as the center of this storm system starts to approach the coastline. Future trackers showing right here around Georgetown with the latest model run. We'll see exactly where that does set up. Doesn't look bad based on what we're seeing right now. But even though you're a little bit removed, notice right in the I-26 corridor, I do want to point out that this banded nature is being picked up on some of our computer models, and it's illustrating that these are going to have really, really gusty winds, 1 to maybe 3, 4 o'clock this afternoon. After that, things will ease up, and by this evening, the rain's going to kind of fade away, and the wind's going to start to come down. So we'll get better. Once again, 5 o'clock this evening will be much better, and it looks like we're going to be on the backside of this storm. But storm surge threat 4 to 7, 3 to 5, depending on where that circulation center comes on shore. You can see the wind gust picking up. Look at that, noon, 67 miles per hour amongst corners. So anticipate the power going out. Hopefully it doesn't for you, but it certainly will in some spots. But with that wind offshore, south of the center, that's going to help alleviate the storm surge threat for some of you today. But here we go towards 4 o'clock and beyond, and those winds start to go down. By tomorrow morning, we're going to wake up, and it's going to sound really quiet outside. Let's go over to Chris Holtzman as he continues to track that rain starting to move onshore.
Yeah, it really is becoming more heavy, Joey, especially over the past few hours. The center of Ian still around 100 miles offshore, and this system, again, we're seeing those bands of tropical moisture move along the coast and now inland. So there's live Super Doppler Max. We're looking at a wide swath of yellows and oranges, even some reds popping up. So on top of that, we're looking at even the wind picking up. So this is a wind-driven rain. St. George, Holly Hill, right along I-95-26, seeing some heavy rain, a band of moderate to heavy rain right over Seabrook Island, Edisto Beach as well, and right over the Tri-County area. We're looking at some of that moderate to heavy rain. Now, again, we're going to continue to watch this heavy rain continue for the next several hours. It's not until the center crosses our area before we see the rain start to come down in intensity. So, again, what we're seeing now is what we're going to get this morning. And on top of that, with the heavy rain and the gusty wind, we do have that power outage threat. Remember, the wet ground loosens up some of those tree roots, which is why we are expecting some trees to come down. Could fall on power lines and increase that power power outage threat. But the actual center of the storm, you see this swirl on live Super Doppler Max. That is the center of Ian. Now, it does not look like a classic hurricane on radar. It's starting to lose its tropical characteristics, and when that happens, the wind field expands as the system starts to weaken. So that's why we're already seeing those winds. But again, bands of moisture pushing on shore, and you can even see this lightning around 50 miles off our coast. That's along the Gulf Stream, some warm water, which is allowing this storm to maintain its strength as it's over the Atlantic. So let's talk about what to expect for rainfall totals. A large swath of around 3 to 6, even 7 inches of rain across the area. Again, the heaviest of the rain will be when the center of Ian moves on shore. Strongest of the winds will be north and east of that center. But our flood threat, again, very high for the area. That's the risk of flash flooding of 4 out of 5 for a large part of the area. And that means if you see those water-covered roadways, those roads covered in water, make sure to turn around, don't drown. So as a result, because of all this, again, it is a First Alert weather day. Download that Live 5 weather app if you have not already. We do see improving conditions over the weekend, but again, we are looking at that heavy rain threat through at least this afternoon. Let's head over to Alicia. She has a look at the roads right now.
Yeah, absolutely, Chris. And that rain continues to come down, and that is not the only thing that's coming down. Let's go ahead and take a live look out there right now so you can see what we're seeing. This is right by that IOP connector. I mean, look at that rain. We are seeing, again, the effects of Hurricane Ian come down, and we're seeing that live here now on the traffic flow map. We're seeing that here on Sullivan's Island and Isle of Palms. Not our only issue. We have a fallen tree right now. If you're traveling on Ashley River Road, that fallen tree is going to be at Matiba Gardens Road. Already seeing fallen trees, just like you said, Chris. We're going to continue to monitor the roads and see about flooding and where these fallen trees could possibly be next coming up.
Hurricane Ian is forecast to impact the Low Country as a Category 1 hurricane, and several communities made their final preparations hours before the storm hit.
Yeah, Ray Arena is live on Pawleys Island. Ray, how are conditions out there where you are right now?
Good morning, Aisha. Good morning, Katie. Right now, we are here on the First Street Boardwalk of Pawleys Island, and the story so far has just been the amount of rain that we've had since we got up this morning, about 3:30 in the morning. It has been nonstop rain. Now, we can't really see here, but you can see with the reeds, there is some wind going around, and you might be able to hear the waves in the background. The waves are absolutely cresting right now. You can see the breakers over the top of as the waves crash onto shore. And right now, Georgetown County, they say their emergency operations center right now is partially activated. And I asked if they would be fully activating that emergency operations center in the future. And they said they will monitor things as the time goes on. Now, when we got into the area last night, the city of Georgetown was still giving out sandbags to people who were in need along Front Street. Now, and they gave around 6 tons of sand to neighbors. Now, workers and city council members, including the mayor, helped fill dozens of sandbags along Front Street to any person who drove up. We spoke to one man who took home around 7 sandbags last night. He says his family member's home floods during a normal afternoon storm and wanted to prepare for the worst.
We came out to get some sand just because of the weather is coming, so we're just preparing for any time of flood and anything like that floods the house. Putting some sand down in front of the door so we make sure we don't flood out. So everybody be safe out there today for the next couple of days. It might get a little rough.
Now, as Chris and Joey have mentioned, the rain is still going to be ongoing. It has been the story so far, and we are expecting anywhere between 4 and 7 feet of storm surge here in the Georgetown, Pawleys Islands areas. Again, the Emergency Operations Center is partially activated. Officials are continuing to monitor that. We saw a reading from a tide gauge just north of us that said that the tide was around 3.5 feet a little bit over a half hour ago. But as the weather continues to deteriorate, as the weather continues to develop, we'll be sure to keep you updated. But for now, live on Pawleys Island, Ray Arena, Live 5 News.
All right. Thank you, Ray. Well, to stay up to date on all the storm coverage, our Live 5 First Alert weather team is working around the clock on multiple streaming platforms to make sure you have everything you need to know about Ian. Download the free apps you see right there on your screen to stay updated.
In November, we'll vote on whether to hold a risky constitutional convention. A convention opens Alaska's entire constitution for unlimited change. Hunting and fishing, privacy rights, guns, access to public lands. We could lose big. No single issue is worth opening this Pandora's box. A convention is just too risky. This November, vote no on ballot measure 1.
This communication was paid for by No One Will Defend Our Constitution. The top 3 contributors are 1630 Fund, NEA Alaska PACE, and IBEW PAC.
In November, we'll vote on whether to hold a risky constitutional convention. A convention opens Alaska's entire constitution for unlimited change. Hunting and fishing, privacy rights, guns, access to public lands. We could lose big. No single issue is worth opening this Pandora's box. A convention is just too risky. This November, vote no on ballot measure 1.
This communication was paid for by No One Will Defend Our Constitution. The top 3 contributors are 1630 Fund, NEA Alaska PACE, and IBEW PAC.
All right, well, good morning, everyone. Time is just about 5:29. You might have noticed that rain picking up in intensity this morning, and that's exactly what we're looking at. Bands of tropical moisture are moving onshore. These are the outer bands of Ian. Center of Ian still about 100 miles or so off our coast, and that's why this rain will continue at least through late this morning into the afternoon, the heavy rain. And there it is right there, plenty of red and yellows popping up on live Super Doppler Max. Again, we are looking at some very heavy rain right over Edisto Beach, Hollywood, Ravenel, Seabrook Island, the Tri-County area. You can see just inundated with those yellows and oranges and reds. So we could see rainfall rates approaching an inch or 2 per hour, especially over the next few hours when that rain continues to increase in intensity, and also into Georgetown, Williamsburg County. We're looking at that. So here's where we have Ian, center of the system right here. You can see that spin. Doesn't really look like a hurricane on radar, but it is Category 1. It's losing its tropical characteristics, and this spin at its current trajectory should allow it to make landfall east of Charleston, mainly between Charleston and Myrtle Beach. Let's time out the storm on Future Tracker. Again, a big story as well, since the center could be east of Charleston. We have that offshore flow. So storm surge would not be as great of a threat as it would be east of the center. So let's put Future Tracker into motion. There's the eye wall of Ian. Again, you get the strongest wind in the eye wall. That's late this morning into the afternoon, and this model paints a landfall again at some point between Charleston and Myrtle Beach. But on the backside of this, some of these bands of moisture, that's some of that heavy rain and wind. And then eventually this will start to push off by this evening. Do want to show you the track of the system again, where the center is. That's critical to our forecast. If it's east of us, storm surge would not be as high as a threat as it would be, say, east of the center in Georgetown and Myrtle Beach. So again, we have noticed this eastward trend of the track, but the worst of the weather will be mainly today, especially late this morning through the afternoon. That's when the wind will pick up.
And we are still monitoring and taking a look at those roads. Let's go ahead and take a live look out there right now. A pretty rare sight to see. Hardly any cars over the Don Holt Bridge right now, but we're seeing lots of water and, of course, rain as you start to head out there. Hopefully not, because, of course, we want you not to be out there if there's flooding. And we do have some roads and lanes closed as of this morning. We'll let you know that as soon as we come back. But as of right now, taking a look at that traffic flow map, looking at a fallen tree on Asheville River Road at Matiba Gardens Road. We're going to continue to monitor the roadways and see if we're going to see more fallen trees or even flooding just like this.
If you or someone you know needs shelter during the storm, Live 5 is on your side with those locations.
Yeah, deputies from the Charleston County Sheriff's Office Animal Control Unit are staffing a pet-friendly shelter. It's located in the Bond Court building on Leeds Avenue in North Charleston. Deputies say the shelter is only for people with pets.
Those without pets who need a shelter are asked to use the one in place at Dunston Elementary. That's on Remount Road in North Charleston.
And according to the state's emergency management website, there is also an emergency shelter in place in Ridgeland. That shelter is pet friendly and will be at the Ridgeland High Junior Elementary Complex on Jaguar Trail.
We want to make sure you stay aware of all the storm conditions throughout the day, so be sure to follow all of our social media platforms, including our brand new TikTok.
In November, we'll vote on whether to hold a risky constitutional convention. A convention opens Alaska's entire constitution for unlimited change. Hunting and fishing, privacy rights, guns, access to public lands. We could lose big. No single issue is worth opening this Pandora's box. A convention is just too risky. This November, vote no on ballot measure 1.
This communication was paid for by No One to Defend Our Constitution. The top 3 contributors are 1630 Fund, NEA Alaska PACE, and IBEW PAC.
Welcome back. 5:35 right now, and we're taking live view out of downtown Charleston. Starting to see the camera bounce around a little bit more over the last 30 minutes or so. Some of those heavy rain bands now starting to move on shore. We're going to be watching places like downtown Charleston for not only some flooding, but to see if we have some storm surge and some tidal flooding around high tide midday. Is going to be very, very important as far as where this storm comes on shore. The reason for that is right now, look at the wind direction. It is down. It's basically out of the north. Now, it's a chilly wind for us. If you haven't stepped outside, don't need to this morning. I'll just tell you, you don't need to go out in it. Temperatures in the upper 50s, low 60s. Does not feel tropical-like out there this morning, but the wind gusts are starting to pick up. That offshore component to the wind is crucial because it's not piling up extra water up into our waterways that would cause significant surging at this point. Now, we have to make sure that that stays the course because wherever we are just to the north of the center, we do expect those winds to turn on shore as the hurricane approaches later on this morning into this afternoon. Getting numerous wind gusts now up close to tropical storm force. If you have to travel over any of our high-span bridges, please use extreme caution. We just got a wind gust reported 48 miles per hour on the Ravenel Bridge. So that's when you got to think twice. Do you really need to go out this morning? Just let this storm move on through. 12 hours from now, we'll be in a much better spot. But there's the latest update from the National Hurricane Center. We're still thinking a landfalling hurricane, probably early to mid-afternoon, somewhere between Charleston and Myrtle Beach. A lot more on this and what you can expect for today coming up shortly. But let's go over to Alishva Wimberly. It sounds like we're starting to get maybe a couple roads closed downtown, Alishva.
Yeah, absolutely, Joey. A couple roads closed downtown, and we're going to show you those roads. But first, I want to go ahead and take a live look out there right now. Now, just to show you those interstates, this is I-26, which you normally be heading eastbound towards downtown. Look at all that rain as of right now. Pretty dangerous to be out there, but I want to go straight to the traffic flow map so you can see these road closures. As of right now, this is confirmed in downtown Charleston. These roads are closed due to flooding. So Fishburne Street at Haygood Avenue, Haygood Street, Wentworth Street, they're closed right now. That is official. We're going to continue to monitor whether some more roads are going to be flooded, but please, please, please try not to be out there right now. We'll keep you updated. Katie?
Hurricane Ian is already impacting travel here in our state. The Hilton Head Airport and the Beaufort Executive Airport have closed ahead of the storm. There are no more flights scheduled for today. The airports are set to reopen tomorrow at 10 a.m. These times could change depending on the weather and the damage that may occur from the storm, as well as flight schedules. According to the Charleston Airport's website, their airfield will close when winds reach 35 knots or greater.
Hundreds of flights have been delayed or canceled today due to the storm. And according to Delta's website, they're telling travelers flying into or leaving the Carolinas and Georgia to keep an eye on their flight status. The list of airports that might be impacted include Augusta, Charleston, Columbia, as well as Charlotte. According to the website FlightAware, there have been at least 75 flights canceled at the Charleston International Airport so far. We've reached out to the airport to see if they will be closed today due to the storm. We have not heard back just yet. And as we mentioned, Live 5 will have team coverage throughout the day, keeping you updated on storm conditions across the Lowcountry.
Right now, we want to take you out to Folly Beach. That's where we find our Molly McBride. So, Molly, what's it like out there so far?
Katie, it is cold and it is windy. The wind and the rain are definitely picking up within the last 10-15 minutes. As you can see behind me, the palm trees are definitely feeling the effects of this rain as we wait for Ian. Of course, we'll be here all morning and we'll keep you updated as with all the updates as they come. Reporting live at Folly Beach, I'm Molly McBride, Live 5 News.
Dominion Energy says they're experiencing power outages caused by Hurricane Ian, and crews will begin assessing damage and restoration as soon as it is safe to do so. We've got an update on some of those outages. As of a few moments ago, over 2,700 customers are impacted by outages in South Carolina, according to Dominion's outage map. That's down from over 5,000 affected at the top of the hour. For context, Dominion serves over 790,000 customers. Burton and the Brighton Beach area near Bluffton are experiencing some of the largest outages. Dominion says the fastest way to report.
And as we As we continue to track Ian, our weather team has declared today a first alert weather day. Of course, we're going to have storm coverage for you throughout the day. And to stay informed, be sure to download our first alert weather app or tune in to any of our streaming platforms. We'll be right back.
In November, we'll vote on whether to hold a risky constitutional convention. A convention opens Alaska's entire constitution for unlimited change. Hunting and fishing, privacy rights, guns, access to public lands. We could lose big. No single issue is worth opening this Pandora's box. A convention is just too risky. This November, vote no on ballot measure 1.
This communication was paid for by No One Want to Defend Our Constitution. The top 3 contributors are 1630 Fund, NEA, Alaska PACE, and IBEW PAC.
Welcome back. Continuing to track Hurricane Ian this morning. You can see out of our live camera right now looking into downtown Charleston. Hopefully this hangs on today. We are looking at the camera certainly bouncing around. The raindrops hitting the lens there as the wind picks up. Our elevated surfaces now are starting to see wind gusts over almost to 50 miles per hour. In fact, short time ago we had a wind gust out to Folly Beach at 56. 48 just reported in on the Ravenel Bridge. So that gives you an idea. Traveling near any open spaces, so especially out toward the beaches, exposed areas, over our high span bridge. That's where you're going to get the really high wind gusts. So they'll continue to ramp up. Just getting started out there right now. You're just getting started with the rainfall, but some of it is heavy at times. You can see that here in the yellow, continuing to push a little bit farther inland. It's going to be a sharp contrast between western areas and eastern areas as far as who gets the heaviest rainfall. But you can see that heavy rainfall continuing to move onshore. Kind of comes and goes. Sometimes it pours and it's really noisy hitting up maybe against your windows side of the house, and then it kind of eases up and you catch a little break. That's the nature of tropical systems. Now, a look at the latest radar kind of expanded out this morning. Center of circulation's right around in here. Now, this thing's kind of losing its tropical characteristics this morning, which is just a technicality, but the center of this storm is moving about ready to turn due north, which puts it on shore somewhere between Charleston, Georgetown area up towards Pawleys Island and Surfside Beach. So we'll be watching that. There's the center of circulation. Short time ago, we had it measured out at about 125 miles to the south and southeast of Charleston. So that means that it has to jog west for it to make it into Charleston Harbor as a landfall there. Farther north you go, it lessens the impacts to the south of the center of storm surge. Where that makes landfall is going to be very important. Now, winds at 85 miles per hour per the latest advisory from the National Hurricane Center. You see that forecast track still's fairly wide, considering here we go. We're starting out our Friday morning, and we're talking about landfall this afternoon. But anywhere, I'd say, from the Isle of Palm, Sullivan's Island area, especially up towards Cape Romaine, getting up around Bulls Bay, and then up into Georgetown County around Winyall Bay, and then up into upper Georgetown County beaches. So that's the area that we're kind of looking at for the landfall of this storm, where that center comes ashore, and north of there, that's where the storm surge once again will be the worst. We do have hurricane warnings once again up and down. Those were issued yesterday. Here's the latest look at Future Tracker, how things will unfold today. And what we're looking at is later this morning, the center starts to approach, and around the center, it's not going to be the typical eye that we get with these storms where there's it's symmetrical all the way around, and you get on the front side, you get really strong winds, on the back side, strong winds and heavy rainfall. One of the sides may not have much rain, especially on the southern side of this, but regardless, this is the latest forecast model, has shifted a little bit farther south than the previous model, showing upper Charleston County, but it's very important because notice how the wind on the western side of this is oriented that it is more offshore. That doesn't allow that storm surge to charge into areas that are seeing the onshore component of the wind, which is to the north of the center. The heavy rainfall will continue through about mid to late afternoon, and then we'll see this storm lift out of here, so conditions will improve quickly. But we are talking about the potential of significant storm surge, so low-lying areas, flood-prone areas will certainly succumb to this tide level coming in, 4 to 7 feet. I know, Chris, a lot of folks always say, does that mean where I live I'm going to get 4 to 7 feet? That's not what that means, of course. That is where the normal tide level will be, 4 to 7 feet on top of that. So I know it can be kind of confusing. A lot of people look out in your yard, you say, I don't have 4 to 7 feet to handle water. Well, once again, that's where the tide level normally is. So if you don't live near a waterway or a creek normally, then or marsh around your house, then obviously you're in a much better space and setup than some folks that back up to water, and a lot of folks do here across the low country.
Yeah, especially when that heavy rain is falling during the high tide. That's where you can really get those issues with flooding. And we look at our wind direction, of course. We have most of us now with an offshore wind. You will notice the strongest wind is right over the open waters of the Atlantic. That's where you're seeing gusts up to 60, even 70 miles per hour. But current winds sustained about 10 to 25 miles per hour across the area. That will continue to pick up as the center of Ian moves closer to the area. It's around 100 miles offshore right now. That center is forecast, as Joey was showing, to come onshore at some point around lunchtime through the early afternoon. But winds are gusting now up to 40 miles per hour for Beaufort. Also Kiowa, we're looking at a gust of 37 miles per hour. And right along our immediate coast, you can see those gusts even up to 40 miles per hour with some of that purple showing up on the map. So our wind gust tracker through the morning, we'll see those winds start to pick up with gusts up to perhaps hurricane force along the immediate coast. That's 74 miles per hour or greater. Keep in mind the ground is wet. When you add wind like that could allow some trees to come down, which is why our power outage threat is a bit elevated, especially late this morning into the afternoon. But you see this model is forecasting the center of the storm to come onshore now a little bit more to the south across Charleston County, as Joey was mentioning. And when that happens, if you are in the eye of the system, the wind will drastically drop. Also, you could see some sunshine with the eye coming onshore. But again, we are looking at winds to stay very elevated through the rest of the day, even as the backside of the system moves through. We could still see gusts up to about 30 to 40 miles per hour, and then improving conditions over the weekend. Want to show you our 7-day forecast again. Today is the first alert weather day. If you have not already, download that Live 5 weather app. We'll continue to provide updates on there. Get the latest alerts to your phone or tablet. But again, we do have improving conditions over the weekend, which is good news. But again, we are expecting that wind-driven rain for most of today.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. And as we see, we are seeing road closures downtown in Charleston County. Now, we just seen more add to the list, so we're going to have to add those. But as of right now, taking a live look out there, I want you to see if you're living closer to that Somerville area, I-26, this is right by University Boulevard. Take a look outside, all that rain. I want to go straight to that traffic flow map because we just got more information from the St. John Fire District. Right now, a fallen tree on Bohicket Road, and we have another fallen tree still on Ashley River Road, which means it's pretty hectic out there. We'll be updating you on that road closure list coming up soon.
Thanks so much, Alicia. Well, we are tracking, of course, Hurricane Ian, the center of the storm offshore, but the wind and rain picking up across the low country. We'll have a breakdown of what to expect today. That's coming up.
In November, we'll vote on whether to hold a risky constitutional convention. A convention opens Alaska's entire constitution for unlimited change. Hunting and fishing, privacy rights, guns, access to public lands. We could lose big. No single issue is worth opening this Pandora's box. A convention is just too risky. This November, vote no on ballot measure 1.
This communication was paid for by No One Will Defend Our Constitution. The top 3 contributors are 1630 Fund, NEA Alaska PACE, and IBEW PAC.
Well, good morning. Time is 5:53 in the morning. Meteorologist Chris Holtzman here. We are tracking the bands of Hurricane Ian moving onshore right now. And again, you notice a lot of red popping up across the low country, and that's indicating moderate to heavy rainfall. Of course, we've seen an uptick in the intensity of the rain right over the St. George area, Tri-County area, down to our barrier islands. You can see Edisto. We are looking at some of those yellows, oranges, and reds right over downtown Charleston, West Ashley, North Charleston, Somerville as well, by the way. And then as we head into Georgetown and Williamsburg County, where we could see a landfall of Ian, we are looking at reds popping up. So let's show you what's going on with this system. It's a very large hurricane. Center of the storm is still around 100 miles south of us. There it is right there. So until that moves onshore, we're going to still see that very heavy rain and gusty wind as well. And that's what we're looking out for. The latest track from the National Hurricane Center has this winds of 85 miles per hour. And then we are looking at this movement now to the north-northeast at 9 miles per hour. So landfall is expected somewhere between Charleston and Georgetown. And again, that's critical to our forecast. If you're east of the center of the storm, that's when you get most of the storm surge, at least the worst of it and the heaviest of the wind. But again, we are looking at this wind field expanding because the system is weakening. So as a result, we are looking at everyone at least experiencing that tropical storm force winds. Future tracker shows through the day the bands of rain rain moving onshore, and then there's the eye wall of Ian. You can see very heavy rain right around lunchtime, and then into the afternoon, we will be on the backside of this system. So again, we will see improvement later today, but we are looking at significant rainfall over the next few hours. Well, let's take a look at the roads now. We'll send it over to Elisheva.
Yeah, absolutely, Chris. The road's still pretty wet out there. I want to go ahead and take a live look out there right now so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. Right here as the entrance in downtown, obviously empty due to potential flooding, and flooding has happened. I want to go straight to these road closures on this map. So as of right now, these closures are active downtown. Please do not go here due to flooding. These roads are closed in downtown Charleston. We'll continue to update you, of course, on air and online. Katie?
Well, throughout the day, we want to make sure you're updated on air and online. Be sure to follow all of our social media platforms, including our new TikTok. Live 5 News continues in just a couple of minutes. Stay with us.
Daddy, can I go with you? Daddy, can I help you? Daddy, can I please have some?
That soda is filled with added sugar that can lead to a lifetime of health problems. Your kids just want to be like you. Choose healthy drinks for you and for them.
In November, we'll vote on whether to hold a risky constitutional convention. A convention opens Alaska's entire constitution for unlimited change. Hunting and fishing, privacy rights, guns, access to public lands. We could lose big. No single issue is worth opening this Pandora's box. A convention is just too risky. This November, vote no on ballot measure 1.
This communication was paid for by No One Defend Our Constitution. The top 3 contributors are 1630 Fund, NEA, Alaska PACE, and IBEW PAC.
Taking a live look at Myrtle Beach. Well, we were going to try and take a live look at Myrtle Beach where the center of the hurricane is, but we are going to, our weather team, we continue to track the storm, and we have been doing so all week.
Absolutely. We have crews all over the low country today to keep you updated on how storm conditions could affect your area.
Live 5's Molly McBride, she's going to be reporting on the live on the conditions on Folly Beach. And Ray Urena, he's been in Georgetown this morning, and he is doing the same thing.
But first, we're going to kick off our team coverage right here in the Live 5 studio.
Our Alicia Wimberly is in the newsroom to give you the very latest on our road conditions as well as closures.
And meteorologists Joey Sovine and Chris Holtzman are in the Weather Center to give us the latest on Hurricane Ian.
We're going to go straight ahead.
All right, thanks a lot. Let's hop right into it. Live Super Doppler Max showing that heavy rainfall starting to pick up. It had been light overnight, but over the last 1 to 2 to 3 hours, we've started to see these rain pans pick up in intensity a little bit. You can see that here in the yellow coming in Georgetown County, continuing to work farther and farther inland, starting to pick up out towards the Somerville, Latson area, back towards Jetburg as well. Waltesboro, you're next up as that continues to move to the west. West of I-95, much lower rainfall totals than east of I-95. And the center of circulation has been really tough to make out here on the radar as of late. Looks like the center's right about in there. That puts it almost due south of Charleston, and this is turning to the north right now. So that's going to bring it in to upper Charleston County, somewhere in Charleston County, up into Georgetown County. Looks like where we'll see the landfall. This storm was about 125. Looks like we're inside of that, miles away. The wind has started to pick up. This is a live view looking out of downtown Charleston, South Carolina Aquarium. This is the Columbus Street Terminal. If you drive over the Ravenel Bridge from Mount Pleasant, look off to the left. It's where you see all the BMWs and all the cars lined up to get on boats to head out. And there they are lined up there. But we're going to watch this water. Very important exactly where the storm comes on shore. Because we're expecting significant storm surge. So that's the normal level the tide's supposed to be, and 4 to 7 feet on top of that. That's going to push water into places it does not normally get. In some places, it's going to push water into where there really hasn't been water in a long time here across the low country, maybe surpassing Hurricane Matthew back in 2016. Ian right now winds at 85 miles per hour, moving to the north and northeast. Here's the latest forecast track. Once again, kind of honed in on that Charleston, Georgetown County coastline with a landfall early to mid-afternoon. The problem with that is high tide in the Charleston Harbor, if it lines up unfavorably, is right at noon. So there's going to be a lot of water there. Depending on whether we get an offshore wind or onshore wind, where the center of circulation will determine how much surge we get in the Charleston Harbor. Hurricane warnings are in effect. Once again, that heavy rainfall as that center approaches will continue to ramp up along with the winds as we go throughout the morning. Let's go over to Chris Holtzman. He's hanging out with me this morning as we continue to track this storm system and certainly bring some heavy rain. And once again, just starting to see that wind pick up out there.
Yeah, we really are. Just want to alert you as well. We just got this alert into our weather center. We have a flash flood warning in effect for these areas in the box here, and that includes downtown Charleston, West Ashley, James Island, Johns Island. This is until 12 o'clock this afternoon. So certainly this alert has gone out on all the phones, and that's accounting for that rainfall already that we've seen and that we are anticipating. So again, this includes downtown Charleston and a majority of the Tri-County area, and that's in effect through 12 o'clock. So we have been watching that. I will show you as well, again, the threat that we have not only with the flash flooding, which of course we've been communicating that threat to you all morning, the wind. We're seeing winds sustain about 10 to 25 miles per hour. On top of that, we are looking at gusts now approaching 40 miles per hour along the coast. So not only are we dealing with that threat for flash flooding, that's flooding that occurs rapidly, and make sure, by the way, to turn around and don't drown on those roadways, but also we're looking at the winds starting to pick up, and that's why we've been saying stay inside if you do not have to go outside. Of course, we'll have the latest information on the storm coming up in just a few minutes. First, though, let's take a look at the roads. We're seeing some closures. We'll send it over to Alicia.
Yeah, absolutely, Chris, and good morning. We're seeing road closures, especially in downtown Charleston. I'm going to go straight to that list just so you can have a visual and see what I'm talking about. So we've been tracking these road closures again, and this is going to be downtown. Places like Fishburne Street, Haygood Street right now closed due to the flooding. We're working on getting a full list on our website so you can see which roads are flooded. But as of right now, that is not our only issue. We have fallen trees on Ashley River Road, on Johns Island, Bohicket Road, We're going to get a closer look at that. But as of right now, just be prepared to turn around and don't drown. We're going to have another full look coming up.
Hurricane Ian is expected to make landfall later this afternoon as a Category 1, but hours before, people were getting last-minute sandbags.
Yeah, Ray Arena is live on the beach at Pawleys Island. Ray, how are things looking out there where you are right now?
Well, right now, Aisha and Katie, right now, as you can probably hear right now, I am live on my phone. We were having some issues with the camera, but you could probably hear the wind gusts even more now than what we could with the microphone out here. And you can see the breeze right here, just right behind me. They're still blowing in the wind. We just got a pretty good gust not too long ago, but the story still, as you can tell by my shirt and how soaked it is definitely still the rain. The rain has not let up since we got here about 4 o'clock this morning, and when we woke up at about 3 o'clock this morning. Now, Georgetown County officials say that their emergency operations center is still partially activated, and they're still monitoring the storm in case they need to fully activate it. But when we got into the area last night, the city of Georgetown was still giving out sandbags, and last night, the Georgetown council members and the mayor handed out dozens of sandbags for several hours for neighbors along Front Street. Now, the city says they distributed around 6 tons of sand to locals ahead of Ian's arrival. Ian is expected to bring heavy rain, wind, and storm surge to the Georgetown Pawleys Island area in the coming hours. Now, we spoke to a man who has lived here for 5 years and hopes this hurricane will have less impact than Hurricane Michael several years ago.
We should see a lot of flooding just from the surge. We've already got some pretty high tides out at our house. We're out at Wedgefield off the Black River, so if it stays like that and we get a ton of rain, then it's going to be pretty bad.
Now, right now we're expecting about 4 to 7 feet of storm surge along where we were at here on the Pawleys Island boardwalk. And as another good gust of wind comes through, you can just feel it. I almost have to brace myself against the wind, but the wind is starting to pick up a little bit here. But like I was mentioning, we're expecting any between 4 and 7 feet of storm surge. We'll be sure to keep you updated as the time goes on. But for now, live on Pawleys Island, Ray Arena, Live 5 News.
We'll be monitoring the storm throughout the day with live reporters all around the low country, so keep your TVs on Channel 5 and download the news and weather apps for all the very latest updates.
Well, coming up, President Biden has approved federal assistance for South Carolina as Hurricane Ian approaches. What this will mean for our state after the storm has passed.
In November, we'll vote on whether to hold a risky constitutional convention. A convention opens Alaska's entire constitution for unlimited change. Hunting and fishing, privacy rights, guns, access to public lands. We could lose big. No single issue is worth opening this Pandora's box. A convention is just too risky. This November, vote no on ballot measure 1.
This communication was paid for by No One Want to Defend Our Constitution. The top 3 contributors are 1630 Fund, NEA, Alaska PACE, and IBEW PAC.
In November, we'll vote on whether to hold a risky constitutional convention. A convention opens Alaska's entire constitution for unlimited change. Hunting and fishing, privacy rights, guns, access to public lands. We could lose big. No single issue is worth opening this Pandora's box. A convention is just too risky. This November, vote no on ballot measure 1.
This communication was paid for by No One Want to Defend Our Constitution. The top 3 contributors are 1630 Fund, NEA Alaska PACE, and IBEW PAC.
Continue to track Hurricane Ian here on our first alert weather day. Live view downtown. Conditions starting to go downhill. The wind has been picking up. Starting to see the wave action bouncing up against the Columbus Street Terminal Port there. Up against the port just down from the South Carolina Aquarium where our camera is stationed. Wind gusts are picking up 30 to 40 miles per hour. In fact, we have a breakdown now. The top wind gusts so far today. We'll continue to compile this as we go through this morning. But you can see out Folly Beach, Fort Sumter already recording almost 60 mile per hour wind gusts. And that's why we're starting to get reports. Alicia has been sharing that with us of some trees that have come down in some roadways already. Hilton Head 52, you can see the Ravenel Bridge. And I do want to point this out. Elevated roadways, even if you're inland, are going to certainly feel the impact of the highest gusts. So that means as you travel over the bridges, hopefully you don't have to today. But if you do, that wind's going to really bounce you around a lot. It is increasing up there. Even in North Charleston, so at the airport, we're now recording almost 40 mile per hour wind gusts. We do have a flash flood warning in effect. That's the green highlighted area, basically Charleston metro area, as heavy rain continues to start to push on shore as we await Ian, which is still over about 100 miles down to our south. All eyes on this storm system as it continues to pile up a lot of rain throughout the morning hours. Conditions will increasingly go downhill late this morning into early this afternoon. That's when we'll be in the brunt of things. Notice the center of circulation forecast here on Future Tracker. That puts kind of the eye band, the strongest winds and the heaviest rainfall right over top of the Charleston metro area, 1, 2, 3 o'clock. And then we start to see that lift northward near the center and to the north of it. Very significant storm surge is expected. Once again, Ian moving to the north-northeast right now with winds sustained at 85 miles per hour. We'll talk more about Ian and continue to track it all morning for you right here on Live 5 News. Let's go over to Alicia in the traffic center as she continues to watch some of those roads that are getting flooded and now trees that are starting to come down on the roads. Alicia.
Yeah, absolutely, Joey. Due to Hurricane Ian, we're seeing road closures happening all over, and we are working to get a full list, but we do have that list for you right now. If you are headed out there, but we don't want you to be, we do have that list. I'm going to take a look at that right now. Downtown Charleston, these are some roads flooded right now due to Hurricane Ian, and that list continues on. This is not just the only portion of those roads. Let's take a look at that traffic flow map. Look at all that blue, all that ponding, of course, due to the hurricane. We have a couple of trees down right now. One that's going to be on Bohicket Road at Edenville Road. That's going to be right by Johns Island, Maybank Highway. You have to be careful out there. Another one on Asheville River Road, another tree that's down, and that one on Johns Island completely blocking the roadway. I mean, basically, we were told by St. John's Fire that you are not able to go that way. So be careful. We're going to continue to take a look at other areas that could be affected by Hurricane Ian. Aisha.
Well, President Joe Biden is ordering federal assistance to South Carolina as Hurricane Ian barrels closer. Biden's approval of the state's emergency declaration authorizes the Department of Homeland Security and the Federal Emergency Management Agency to coordinate all disaster relief efforts. That includes any effort to help alleviate hardships caused by the storm.
State leaders say the state is now acting on its storm response plan.
Yeah, the Emergency Operations Center will be running 24-hour operations today, remaining in contact with local emergency management agencies as the storm does come through.
Here are some videos and photos of the devastation the storm has left behind in Florida. Now it's on its way to our state. Seeing the devastation left behind in Florida, Governor Henry McMaster says leaders are concerned about South Carolinians taking the storm seriously.
McMaster also says people who live in low-lying areas especially need to be ready and know where they're going to go if it does become unsafe to stay at home. The South Carolina Department of Transportation says people should avoid traveling as much as possible today.
We're continuing to follow power outages here in the Lowcountry and around the state. Here are the latest updates we have. Over 3,300 Dominion Energy customers in the state are currently affected by outages. Dominion has a message on their outage map that says they're experiencing outages caused by Hurricane Ian. They say crews will begin damage assessment and restoration as soon as it is safe to do so. They're also reminding you to stay away from downed power lines. Santee Cooper has 971 customers currently impacted by outages. Berkeley Electric says 80 of their customers are experiencing outages as well.
Now, if you do have questions about Hurricane Ian, Live 5 has a phone bank that you can call with any of those questions you might have about the storm. We're going to give you that number right now, 843-402-5566. Again, 402-5566. Heading outside, taking a live look at Folly Beach, where our Molly McBride is keeping an eye on weather conditions out there. You see it right there. Up next, she's going to give us a full report on what it's looking like out there.
In November, we'll vote on whether to hold a risky constitutional convention. A convention opens Alaska's entire constitution for unlimited change. Hunting and fishing, privacy rights, guns, access to public lands. We could lose big. No single issue is worth opening this Pandora's box. A convention is just too risky. This November, vote no on ballot measure 1.
This communication was paid for by No One Want to Defend Our Constitution. The top 3 contributors are 1630 Fund, NEA, Alaska PACE, and IBEW PAC.
All right, if you're just waking up here, 6:19 is the time on our Friday morning. This is the day we issued a first alert weather day back on Monday. We want to give you as much heads up as possible that we knew a storm was on the way. We didn't know at times exactly where it was going to go, but here we go. We have Hurricane Ian, a Category 1 hurricane. Last update from the National Hurricane Center, 5 o'clock, put at 145 miles to the south and southeast of Charleston, but with now about an hour and a half passing and the movement movement of about 9 miles per hour. It's probably roughly close to about 125 miles, 130 miles down to our south and southeast. Winds at 85. Here it comes northward. We are looking at a landfalling, most likely still hurricane as it approaches the coastline. It's crossing over some warm water. Then our coastal waters actually cool down a lot because of the cooler weather as of late. So we'll see how that interaction goes today. But regardless, we don't expect a lot of fluctuation from where we're at. But this puts a landfalling hurricane somewhere between the Charleston Harbor and up to about Pawleys Island, Surfside Beach, Myrtle Beach area there. So we continue to watch. The center circulation is kind of tough to make out right now exactly where it's at. So we'll get updates over the next couple of hours from the National Hurricane Center as it kind of pinpoint the center of circulation, just because this is kind of transitioning out of a purely tropical state because cooler and dry air that's starting to infiltrate it. But nonetheless, outside this morning, the end result is the same. We got wind, we have rain, and we could have some significant storm surge as this comes ashore this morning. Here's a look at the wind speed starting to pick up over 20 miles per hour. There's a gust 40, 43 in Beaufort. We've had wind gusts reported out to Folly Beach over 50 miles per hour. Ravenel Bridge about 50 miles per hour. So if you have to travel this morning, be extra careful out there, and just keep in mind that you may be able to control the roadway or how you drive on the roadway, but we are starting to get some fallen trees on some of our back roads out there being reported in. So we got to be mindful of that and be mindful that there's going to be debris out there, whether that's just palm fronds or whether that's more significant branches. That's all going to be a possibility if you do have to travel. Wind gust tracker shows those winds ramping up as we go towards 11 o'clock. Look at that nearing hurricane strength out at Folly Beach, according to this latest computer model run, putting the center circulation on shore in Charleston County, upper Charleston County, with the center of this storm per future tracker here at 4 o'clock, starting to move inland. Now notice how the wind gusts start to come down after about 2-3 o'clock. For most of you, it will take a little bit longer later in the afternoon and into the early evening the farther north you go, but things will be improving. We just have to get through the next, I'd say 10 hours or so, and then conditions will get better. Here's a look at the power outage. What this does is forecast, anticipates with the wet ground out there and also the strong winds, how likely is it for you to get your power to go out? Well, in the yellow here, that shows where the possibility starts to increase. You can see that at 9:30. Notice how it kind of fluctuates around as we go toward lunchtime. Most of us, possibilities power outages. So make sure you have your phones charged up today. Never know how long the power outages will be. We don't expect it to be widespread enough that it's a really long period of time, but it may be tonight and into tomorrow before power comes back on in some spots. And you can see that into this afternoon and then into this evening. Look at that along the Georgetown County coastline. You start to see some orange here at 4 o'clock. So that shows that risk kind of increasing and maximizing there before it starts to come down into this evening. Here's a look at future trackers showing that heavy rainfall kind of working its way through the area, kind of ebb and flow. Sometimes it'll be really heavy. Sometimes it'll ease up a little bit. We're talking, I think for most of you, 4 to 8 inches should do it. But the core, the strongest storm with the center circulation is going to come on shore late this morning, early to mid-afternoon. And then this storm's kind of lopsided. So the backside is going to have wind initially, but the rain's going to start to ease up. So that strong wind through 4 o'clock, and then things start to improve as we go into this evening. Let's head over to Chris Holtzman as we do continue to tag team this morning, this weather, and continue to track things. Let's get the latest with him. Chris?
Yeah, thanks so much, Joey. Well, we do have newly issued a flash flood warning. That includes downtown Charleston, West Ashley, portions of James Island, also Mount Pleasant, that area nearby, and even near the 526-26 merge, again, because of all the rain that Joey was mentioning that's already fallen. I mean, wind is picking up as well, so not a great scenario, of course, to be outside on the roads. A live Super Doppler Max shows just a wall of water across the area right now. When we continue to see the rain pick up in intensity and the winds, that power outage risk, as Joey mentioned, will be going up. But let me show you what's going on radar. We have some moderate to heavy rain right over Somerville, Goose Creek, North Charleston, also our barrier islands, also including Ravenel, Hollywood, Edisto, Seabrook. We are looking at that moderate to heavy rain right over the Tri-County area. And then up into Georgetown and Williamsburg County as bands of tropical moisture are moving onshore. So here is a loop of Hurricane Ian over the past few hours. You can see the center of circulation is down here. It's still about over 100 miles away from us, but again, where the center makes landfall, that will play a big role on who sees the worst of the storm surge and the wind. But regardless, the system will start to weaken as it approaches the coast, and you will notice, again, we still have more wind and rain ongoing along the open waters of the Atlantic. Now, what we have right now, the wind is coming in at about 10 to 25 miles per hour. Gusts have been reported now up to 40 miles per hour for Kiowa Island right now, and we're expecting those wind gusts to increase. Of course, we'll have the latest information on Hurricane Ian and where it's going coming up in just a few minutes.
And as we told you earlier, we do have crews all around the low country this morning to give you the very latest on how the weather conditions are changing in real time.
We now head to Folly Beach. That's where we find our Molly McBride. So Molly, how's it looking out there this morning?
Yeah, good morning, ladies. In the last 10, 15 minutes, the wind has picked up significantly. As you can see, the shot might look a little funky. That's because we're struggling to keep the camera because of the wind and the rain. It's really hitting us from all angles right now. And on top of that, it's very cold. As you can see, it's definitely intensifying around us. We're going to be here all morning keeping you updated. Right now, flooding levels don't look too bad. We were just down on Center Street where the water was still flowing into the gutters. Didn't look like any buildup was too bad yet, but of course we'll keep monitoring that as the morning goes on. We'll be here all morning reporting live from Folly Beach. I'm Molly McBride, Live 5 News.
All right. Thank you, Molly. We're going to continue, of course, to follow hurricane coverage all morning, but we do want to make sure you stay informed. Our Live 5 weather team is working around the clock on all social media platforms to keep you in the know, you and your family, about the storm. Download the Live 5 weather app also to stay up to date.
In November, we'll vote on whether to hold a risky constitutional convention. A convention opens Alaska's entire constitution for unlimited change. Hunting and fishing, privacy rights, guns, access to public lands. We could lose big. No single issue is worth opening this Pandora's box. A convention is just too risky. This November, vote no on ballot measure 1.
This communication was paid for by No One Want to Defend Our Constitution. The top 3 contributors are 1630 Fund, NEA Alaska PACE, and IBEW PAC.
In November, we'll vote on whether to hold a risky constitutional convention. A convention opens Alaska's entire constitution for unlimited change. Hunting and fishing, privacy rights, guns, access to public lands. We could lose big. No single issue is worth opening this Pandora's box. A convention is just too risky. This November, vote no on ballot measure 1.
This communication was paid for by No One One Defend Our Constitution. The top 3 contributors are 1630 Fund, NEA Alaska PACE, and IBEW PAC.
All right, well, good morning, everyone. Time is approaching 6:31. Of course, I do want to give you that first alert. We do have that flash flood warning, including most of the Tri-County, and that is in effect until noon. We've already seen a few inches of rain in the warned area, and we're expecting several more inches, of course, as bands of moisture from Hurricane Ian move onshore. This is that indication, once again, don't drive over roads covered in water. You want to turn around, don't drown. You don't know how deep the water is. And for that matter, most of us are seeing that flood threat. You can see the bands of heavy rain moving onshore right now over Monk's Corner, St. George, Somerville, down to Edisto, also at Beaufort, very heavy rain. Ravenel, Hollywood, we're seeing that moderate to heavy rain. Also right over the other parts of Charleston County, including McClellanville, for example. Mount Pleasant, very heavy rain. Some light rain now near Georgetown, but that will fill back in as bands of tropical moisture move onshore. The center of Ian's about 115 miles away from Charleston, and that should make landfall at some point somewhere between Charleston and, say, Myrtle Beach. Forecasting mainly the northern part of Charleston County or Georgetown County. But again, here's the center of the storm on radar, and this will continue moving to the north. And until that's the case, we're expecting the wind and the heavy rain to continue as that tropical moisture moves onshore. Gusts up to 43 miles per hour reported in Beaufort, but locally higher gusts even to hurricane force have been reported, especially off our coast. And we are expecting the wind field to expand with the system as it weakens, eventually making landfall as a Category 1 hurricane. Again, east of forecast of Charleston. Areas to the east of the center have the best chance of seeing most of the storm surge because that flow is onshore, whereas west of the center, you get that onshore flow, or the offshore flow rather, and that will tend to at least limit the storm surge potential. That onshore flow east of the center is where you get more of the storm surge. So those of us in Georgetown, Pawleys Island, we are looking at that potential. Just want to show you as well where this system is going, and you can see just bands of rich tropical moisture moving onshore, and then even through the afternoon, we'll still see some of that heavy rain with improvement coming in during the evening. The wind, though, will still be around through tonight.
Yeah, absolutely, Chris. And we've been tracking the roads to see, of course, how the infrastructure has been affected, the roads being flooded, and, of course, taking a note and look at fallen trees. So I want to take you out there right now. Since you mentioned Mount Pleasant, let's just take a look at this shaky camera. That's the entrance through the Ravenel Bridge. I mean, man, we're seeing rain and the wind obviously really just heated out there. Like we see the wind is moving the camera itself. So let's go to the traffic flow map. As of right now, we do have some issues. All this ponding, that's what the blue is representing, but we want to go straight to where the issues are. As of right now, we still have a fallen tree on Bohicket Road, so Johns Island. Hopefully you are not traveling during this weather, but if you are, be cautious of this. Another fallen tree on Ashley River Road at Matiba Gardens. Now we are going to monitor this, but take a look at these road closures. We have a full list on our website at live5news.com. If you are traveling, please keep this in mind for flooding.
As Hurricane Ian makes its way toward our coast, the South Carolina Department of Transportation has already made preparations.
SCDOT is working to maintain the safety of the state's roads and bridges, and officials have already sent 20 additional crews to the coastal counties, which are expected to be hardest hit.
Officials have been planning for this storm since the beginning of the week, consulting with state, federal, and local partners in emergency response and public safety. The majority of the work for SCDOT, though, is after the storm passes.
Crews will be stationed around the state, clearing any trees or other debris from the roads. SCDOT had this message for people who might be on the roads at any point today. SCDOT officials say that they will have 24-hour operations beginning today, lasting throughout the storm and its aftermath. If you took advantage of storing your car in one of the open free parking garages, we do want to remind you of when you need to pick it up following the storm. Now, City of Charleston officials say cars must be out of the garages by 5 p.m. tomorrow. Those parked at the garage on 90 Cumberland Street will need to pick up their cars by noon tomorrow. We'll be right back.
In November, we'll vote on whether to hold a risky constitutional convention. A convention opens Alaska's entire constitution for unlimited change. Hunting and fishing, privacy rights, guns, access to public lands. We could lose big. No single issue is worth opening this Pandora's box. A convention is just too risky. This November, vote no on ballot measure 1.
This communication was paid for by No One One Defend Our Constitution. The top 3 contributors are 1630 Fund, NEA Alaska PACE, and IBEW PAC.
Welcome back, 6:38, and we do continue our first alert weather day as we track Hurricane Ian nearing the South Carolina coast this morning. Look at this band of heavy rainfall draped across the majority of the area, starting to shift inland, catching a little bit of a break up into Georgetown County, and that'll be kind of how the storm system goes today. Really poor at times, and it may ease up for a little while here and there, but the winds will continue. There's some heavier downpours just offshore Charleston County. A flash flood warning in effect for Charleston Metro. That goes all the way through 12 o'clock. They skipped the usual step of just issuing it for an hour and said, hey, it's pouring rain. It's going to continue to pour rain. Don't be out and about in the Charleston area. Significant flooding certainly could occur and will likely occur as well. We're going to watch this band right there. That's essentially... This is not a typical tropical system, but you got to think of this as like the eye wall of this system. Essentially, that's where the strongest winds are going to be, and we'll see that move northward. So the center circulation is somewhere down there. It's not a very pretty storm system in the sense, meteorologically speaking, but nonetheless, it's still held together just enough to maintain Category 1 hurricane status with winds at 85 miles per hour. Now, we do forecast this to come ashore somewhere between Charleston Harbor and Pawleys Island, probably somewhere in between there as we go later into the early afternoon hours. So that's the best guess as far as a landfall point at this point in time. But hurricane warnings up and down the coast as we could see gusts to hurricane strength in some spots. In fact, as we take a live view outside right now, this camera looks like it went out just a second ago. May catch back up here shortly, and you probably understand why. Connectivity, there it goes, it's starting to come back. And you see those waves may have caught it there, starting to come in there. That's downtown at the South Carolina Aquarium as the wind gusts pick up. We've had some wind gusts now over 55 miles per hour. We'll continue to track that, have a full look at what you can expect for today coming up in just a couple minutes.
We are continuing to track power outages caused by Hurricane Ian throughout the morning. Dominion Energy now has around 7,000 customers impacted by outages in the state. Dominion Energy's outage map shows a very large outage in the Somerville area near Somerville Medical Center, impacting 1,400 people. Defusky Island, Brighton Beach, and Burton are also currently experiencing some of the largest outages, and Dominion isn't the only company experiencing those outages. Berkeley Electric now saying 90 of their customers are experiencing outages. Edisto Electric has 45 customers without power. Santee Cooper's outages have decreased significantly to just over 20 of their customers impacted.
In November, we'll vote on whether to hold a risky constitutional convention. A convention opens Alaska's entire constitution for unlimited change. Hunting and fishing, privacy rights, guns, access to public lands. We could lose big. No single issue is worth opening this Pandora's box. A convention is just too risky. This November, vote no on ballot measure 1.
This communication was paid for by No One to Defend Our Constitution. The top 3 contributors are 1630 Fund, NEA Alaska PACE, and IBEW PAC.
In November, we'll vote on whether to hold a risky constitutional convention. A convention opens Alaska's entire constitution for unlimited change. Hunting and fishing, privacy rights, guns, access to public lands. We could lose big. No single issue is worth opening this Pandora's box. A convention is just too risky. This November, vote no on ballot measure 1.
This communication was paid for by No One to Defend Our Constitution. The top 3 contributors are 1630 Fund, NEA Alaska PACE, and IBEW PAC.
All right, welcome back. Waking up 6:44 on our first alert weather day that we alerted you to back on Monday because we knew that Hurricane Ian in some form or fashion was going to be impacting us here in the low country. Computer models kind of flip-flopped all over the place. The end result is this right here. Hurricane Ian starting to move into the South Carolina low country. And you can see that. Look at these trees. This is out in West Ashley, so this is not along the immediate coast where the winds are even stronger and it's pouring even more. But you can see areas. Trees kind of moving around a bit as some sheets of heavy rainfall are flying through the air. Here's a look at the wind speeds now. Almost everybody's up over 20, approaching 25 mile per hour sustained winds. And we're now getting everybody, almost everybody, with wind gusts in the 30s now starting to creep up toward the 40s. In fact, here's a look at the peak wind gusts so far with the storm system. We're looking at almost 60 miles per hour recorded out in Folly Beach, Fort Sumter. Those are more exposed areas. But you can even see if you were thinking about traveling this morning, heads up, those high-span bridges already starting to feel those higher wind gusts. Ravenel Bridge reported in at 48 miles per hour with a gust a short time ago. Isle of Palms at 44. And even North Charleston, so this is now pushing inland, where we have wind gusts that have gone almost to 40 miles per hour. Worse weather now through 5 o'clock. How much rain can you expect? Well, it's going to vary a bit. Farther inland you go, a little bit less than near the coast, but you can see a hefty amount of rainfall out there, enough that flash flood warnings have been issued for the Charleston metro area. Chris Holtzman will join us in just a second, talk more about that. But you can see the peak wind gust for inland areas, maybe as high 60 to 70 miles per hour. At the beaches, we could peak at, in a couple of isolated spots, up to hurricane strength. And that certainly is enough to call some trees down, some power outages out there as well. We have to watch the storm surge. Looks like this is going to be coming in close to high tide in the Charleston area, but it will be highly dependent as far as where the worst storm surge is because of the track of the storm. Much less the farther south you are from this storm coming on shore, more if you're right in the path and just to the north of this storm, and that's because of counterclockwise nature and the flow of wind around a storm system. Ian has winds at 85 miles per hour is the last check from the National Hurricane Center, moving off to the north and northeast. Still thinking that this is going to make landfall somewhere from Charleston north toward Myrtle Beach. And that's still widespread, but this actual center of circulation has kind of been just meandering about, and it's not very well defined, so it's hard to make out where the center is. So we'll continue to watch it, but remember, counterclockwise wind. So if you're on the west side or on the left side of this storm system, the winds are more offshore. That helps to prevent really that significant storm surge that is going to be felt on the eastern side of this storm as it does come ashore, and that's going to happen around lunchtime early this afternoon. Hurricane warnings do continue up and down our coast. Future trackers showing some of that heavy rainfall moving onshore. You can see the core of that right there around the lunchtime, early afternoon hours. That's when we expect the winds to peak, and then we should see a quick improvement as we go into this evening. Very heavy rainfall. This is how much is more to come. Computer models going back and forth. 2, 4, 5 more inches of rain. Some spots maybe even more than that. Storm surge will be highly dependent once again on the track of this, but in the peak areas we're looking at 4 to 7 feet. What that means is normally dry ground where it butts up against water, where the tide usually peaks at high tide. 4 to 7 feet possible on top of that if that occurs at high tide. So that puts water in a lot of places that it is not normally at. And look at future tracker with our wind gust, and you can see how those continue to accelerate. Now showing a wind gust at 73 miles per hour there as we hit noon. But watch what happens as we go towards 4 o'clock and into this evening. We get on the backside of the storm. Things tend to ease up very, very quickly with this. So we'll continue to watch it. No doubt there will be some power outages. Let's go over to Chris Holtzman as he continues to track this as well, and that flash flood warning in downtown. Chris?
Yeah, thanks so much, Joey. We do have that flash flood warning that was issued about a half hour ago for a large part of the area, and that includes downtown Charleston, portions of North Charleston, even James Island, Johns Island, West Ashley, right on 17, 5, 26, and 26. And again, this is for the threat for flash flooding. If it's not already occurring, it is imminent, and we have had reports of roadways closed already, and this is because only a few inches of rain have fallen. We're expecting several more inches of rain, as Joey has mentioned. So again, the official counties included portions of Berkeley and Charleston County. Let's talk about what's happening right now. You can see that torrential rainfall ongoing. It's a wind-driven rain, and as we've been saying, the rainfall, the intensity of it will continue to increase as the center of Ian moves closer closer to the coast. So we are looking at some very heavy rain right now over Somerville, Goose Creek, Holly Hill, Ravenel, Hollywood. Edisto seeing very heavy rain right on 17 Seabrook, and we're going to continue to see that through at least the early part of the afternoon. It's not until the center crosses our area where we're going to see the rain start to come down. But you do see that area warned for the flash flood warning, but everyone needs to keep that in mind. If you see roads covered in water, and we really don't advise travel, you want to turn around, don't drown. You do not know how deep that water is. And then some lighter rain across Georgetown County. That will fill in. As you can see, bands of tropical moisture moving on shore. Center of the storm is right here. You can see I have it drawn, the circulation, and that's about 100 miles, 115 miles from our coast. So that's why we are expecting that rain and wind to continue in intensity because of the wet ground and the wind. We could see trees come down. Those roots could loosen up, and that could lead to power outages. But again, we are looking at those gusts now along the coast approaching 40 to 50 miles per hour with even stronger gusts offshore. Again, where the center of the storm travels, that's going to have a big role on our forecast, at least change our impacts in terms of the strongest storm surge. Looks like that'll be east of the center, mainly east of downtown Charleston. But again, we are watching that rain and wind pick up in intensity. Well, speaking of the roadways, let's check in on some closures. What's going on? We'll send it over to Alicia.
Yeah, absolutely, Chris. That rain is intensifying, especially over I-26. If you're living in that Somerville area, I do want to go ahead and take a live look out there right now just so you can see what it does look like. I mean, we're seeing rain pouring down, and you can see that right by the exit for College Park Road and University Boulevard. It's continuing, but right now we're looking at closures this morning right in downtown Charleston. We have a full list of this on our website at Live 5. Due to the flooding, these roads already closed down, already on the website for Charleston County. We're seeing that they're putting their out, and as of now, it continues. All this ponding, and we have fallen trees over in the area for Ashley River Road and Johns Island. Now, we're going to continue to update you, of course, on air and online. Aisha?
Well, we are making sure you know exactly how the storm is affecting your area throughout the day.
We're continuing our team coverage by taking you out to the Hilton Head area.
Sarah Winkleman joins us from our sister station, WTOC, out of Savannah, Georgia. And Sarah, how is it out there where you are this morning? Good morning.
Good morning. Well, a very consistent rainfall has started to come down within the last 30 to 45 minutes. We've had some strong gusts of wind, but nothing too crazy as a consistent wind out here.
Looks like we're having some technical difficulties there. We're switching gears. Residents in the Georgetown area made their final preparations ahead of Hurricane Ian's anticipated arrival later today.
Ray Urena spoke to neighbors and is live on the beach of Pawleys Island. Ray, how are conditions out there? We've been with you throughout the morning. How's it going now?
Well, right now, Katie and Aisha, the rain mercifully has stopped, at least for now. And for the most part, the wind has picked up a little bit. And right now, it is starting to line up. I mean, sunrise is only about 20 minutes away. But now that the sun is starting to brighten up, we can see a bit more of the waves. The waves are almost up to the dock that we're on right now at the First Street Boardwalk here on Pawleys Island. And right up above, there's some clouds, some very, very fast-moving clouds over our heads that are now visible because we're so close to sunlight, and you can see that the breeze are blowing in the distance. But before all this weather rolled in, the city of Georgetown, they distributed around 6 tons of sand along Front Street to neighbors. Workers were out there starting early in the morning and went late into the night, and to make sure sand was available for those who needed it. Now, some neighbors who live in low-lying areas took advantage and got several bags. One man said he got sand just in case the storm surge and flooding creeps up to his family's home.
Just normal day, like when it rains, it floods a little bit, but I can imagine when this storm come in, what it's going to do if it rains and storm and wind come through. We'd be in a lot worse trouble.
So like I mentioned, that the wind has picked up here, and I just checked the tidal gauge just a little bit north of us. It says it's currently around 3 feet, but again, we're expecting anywhere between 4 and 7 feet of storm surge as Ian arrives into the area later today. And Georgetown County officials say their emergency operations center, that's still in a partial activation status, but they're going to be continuing to monitor the storm and are prepared to fully activate the EOC if that time comes. But for now, live in Pawleys Island, Ray Urena, Live 5 News.
Thanks so much, Ray. Well, do you have any questions about Hurricane Ian? Well, Live 5 has a phone bank that you can call with all the questions you might have about the storm. That number is 843-402-5566.
And if you or someone you know needs shelter during the storm, Live 5, we're always on your side, and we have those locations. Deputies from the Charleston County Sheriff's Office's Animal Control Unit, they're staffing a pet-friendly shelter. It's located in the Bond Court building on Leeds Avenue in North Charleston. Deputies say this shelter is only for people with pets. Those without pets seeking shelter are asked to use one of those in place at Dunston Elementary. That's on Remount Road in North Charleston. And according to the state's emergency management website, there's also emergency shelters in place in Ridgeland. That shelter is pet friendly and will be at the Ridgeland High Junior Elementary Complex on Jaguar Trail.
And definitely just looking at another look out there with these road closures. Please be careful out there if you are traveling. We do advise you to not travel. We have fallen trees on Asheville River Road and on Johns Island on Bohicket Road. Be careful out there. I want to show you another look if we can, just so you can see that it is really raining out there. Please, please, please be careful as we see it right there by Mount Pleasant. This is right by that Ravenel Bridge. It is flowing down and floods will happen as we obviously see those road closures. Again, please be careful out there.
All right, thanks a lot, Lishba. And the wind gust up to 50 miles per hour now on the Ravenel Bridge to go with that heavy rainfall that she was mentioning. Now, I do want to turn your attention. We have some heavy rain moving through right now, but that band of red just offshore, that's the core of the worst weather. Right now, about 60 miles off the coast to Folly and the Isle of Palms. That will be trying to approach the coast. Now, we'll see where exactly that sets up. That will determine who gets the strongest wind gusts, but nonetheless, tropical storm force winds up to hurricane force along the coast. And there's a live view outside, pretty rough in downtown.
All right, well, we will be following Hurricane Ian coverage all day long, but first we are going to take a short break.
After that, we'll go to CBS Mornings for a look at Ian's impact around the country.
In November, we'll vote on whether to hold a risky constitutional convention. A convention opens Alaska's entire constitution for unlimited change. Hunting and fishing, privacy rights, guns, access to public lands. We could lose big. No single issue is worth opening this Pandora's box. A convention is just too risky. This November, vote no on ballot measure 1.
This communication was paid for by No One Defend Our Constitution. The top 3 contributors are 1630 Fund, NEA Alaska PACE, and IBEW PAC.